welcome to the Geometric View, Episode 6, Season 1. We will not let you down. You're going to want to watch this one all the way through. Yeah, it might be 3 hours, but take it.
Guide this time.
Nice. I don't know how much you're going to be a background because we're going to hop right into the exact kind of stuff we were talking about last week. So,
well, maybe I'll talk then.
Cool. We'll see. We'll see where it all goes.
Cool, man.
Good afternoon, guys. The call's a little weird today. I think it might be because of the storm. It's calling people late. Did it ring you? David? Okay. We got Michael here. All right, now, yeah, it's slowly calling other people. Okay. Nice. What's up, Michael? How you doing today?
Hey. I don't like you anymore now that you don't have your beard. I don't even trust you.
That's what a lot of people say. Everybody at work, they're like, "You're not the same guy. You're not."
Who are you? Who even are you?
Well, I assure you, I'm looking into the camera. Now you can see me. I am the dude with that face gun. I'm the dude.
You're the dude. Are you that? Are you that bubble dude?
I do bubble sculpting.
You're the bubble dude, aren't you?
Yeah, Terrence is the bubble dude. I am Terrence's apprentice. So more like I learned a little bit, but he taught me the ropes, and then I took it the Dougherty set direction, and all my shapes are made directly out of the Dougherty set.
So if you were going to be the dude, you'd be the Dougherty dude.
I guess I'm the Dougherty dude, yeah.
You're the Dougherty dude!
I'm the Dougherty dude! And this is the Dougherty dog right here. Come here.
You gotta get t-shirts.
This is the Dougherty dog.
And the DD.
Yeah. Down.
Is that dog that was just in heat last week?
Yep, she's still in heat.
I
think it lasts like... She won't be whining, hopefully, this time.
Get that bitch laid.
Yeah, she's like, I'm whining and I don't know why.
Something is happening to my body, Daddy.
All right. So, hey guys. Hello, everyone. Today we have a really special episode. I think I already started recording. Yep. So we are going to be talking and understanding quite a few different things, but one of the main concepts, unless Sandro joins us, which then we'll be talking about his mirror model as well, and how it relates to biology, the solar system's gut, and everything really acting like, sorry, I'm shaking my thing here. Everything really acting like living nutrients and ingredients to feed other circuits, like just everything's inducing everything else. And maybe food and ingestion is like induction in a way, and it feeds our energy. I think it kind of is. Anyway. Okay, so today, welcome to the Electric View. We have Heather, David, Michael, and I don't know if I see anybody else on the call, and me, Buddy James. And we're going to hop into Eric Learners Galactic plasmoid model, and which also has to do, which is very similar to Hannes Alfvén's Galactic Circuit. And Garreth from See the Pattern has put together quite a good presentation and quite a good summary of all sorts of connections here with plasmoids, how magnetic self-compression works, like the helix here, you see the helical winding. But anyway, and I've also come across some discoveries of my own, mapping it out with the Dougherty Network, the Dougherty sets. And we're going to jump right into the geometry of it. I'm going to go right here, share my screen, share entire screen, boom. Okay, now I connected Garreth with as soon as I saw what he was doing, I connected him with the Electric View, and we started our podcasts right around the same time. and he is very, very to the point and matter of fact. When you look at his videos, I really like them. But what got me thinking about this is some of his videos. So I will play one right now. And he said he would have liked to join us, but Saturdays he's unavailable. So I think him and I are working on something. Excuse me. Working on something behind the scenes, an interview type thing where we get deeper into the geometry together. So that's going to be
cool.
fun.
That would be great. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. So I'm going to move in that type of direction. So I guess we'll start here. And this is See the Pattern. See the Patterns channel. It's snowing and raining. We had a big snowstorm today. Whoops. Did I go? Oh, it went to the next one. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to mute it. There we go. All right, bear with me for this commercial. Skip the ad. Now, this is all about filaments and active galactic nuclei and Alfvén's Galactic Circuit, which deals with a central high energy plasmoid, or what do they call these? Collimated stellar projections out of the center of the active galactic nuclei. So he goes through here and he models his idea of how the energy moves inside of the galactic circuit. So the energy comes out of the poles where there's high energy, high density, wraps around and comes back and closes the loop and comes back here, which we can see on the geometric view right here. And I wanted to go here so that I could tell you the most important part about Alfvén's Galactic Circuit is the current comes out of the north and south poles and comes back in through the plane of rotation on the sides, out through the north and south and in through the plane of rotation through the sides.
Now, this is obviously not the only model in electric universe paradigm, is it?
Definitely not, but this is
it's the one that fits your work most closely, is it not?
It's the one that fits every single hole of density of energy and the harmonics of the collimated galactic currents that are coming out of them.
Yeah.
So there's only pretty much a couple ways to go with this. Nassim Haramein has a model that's a lot newer than these that shows the same dual torus stacking that I'll get into it in a little bit here. But these are older models than Nassim Haramein's model. Walter Russell's model, current out through the center, back in through the sides at the plane of rotation. Russell might have had it going the other way around, but either way, that's the Russell's model inside of the Dougherty Network transposed over.
So the varying models are fairly closely related, is what you're saying.
Yeah, the varying models are pretty closely related. There's a few discrepancies, and Garreth from See the Pattern really gets into it well and starts to show how these currents produce peduncles, which are like streams of umbilical plasma chains that come out of the circuit and create the scales of life that we're familiar with. So this is the model that I'm showing here with just one type of filament inside of the Dougherty network. There is many different types of every single type of nesting filament. The filaments nest, which I'll get into in a little bit here. There's harmonic nesting here that's interrelated, and the entire thing is phase conjugate. So it's nesting ratios of nesting ratios of the golden mean, downward, inward, upward, outward. So let me hop back over to see the pattern here. It looks like he's got some numbers. GA, is anybody familiar with GA? I'm not sure exactly what that is. Okay, but that's some of the numbers here of the charge coming in and going out. Then he goes through, shows that it's a plasmoid, and a plasmoid works very similar as the same. Well, Eric Learner's model is a small scale plasmoid and a large scale plasmoid of it. You can see it produces the waves of the galactic arms.
Can we go back and look at that one of yours for a second?
Yes.
If it gets loud in my house, I apologize while I'm in. But all right, so the in-betweeners, like, okay, I'm pointing with my mouse again, like I can't, but okay, so this bottom, so we'll call this one the southeastern lobe, right? Like
Yeah.
the lobe section of it. Okay,
Yeah.
so the two circles just on the interior of the outer red bar, right where your hand is, exactly. No, yep. So that, go back to right where you were before. There. So directly across from that one, the next circle over to the right. Okay, there's like an hourglass figure inside. Nope. The other right. This same interior circle. So there's two projecting bars in the center of this lobe.
This hourglass?
Yeah. There's, God, I wish I could just point at it, because in this circle there's a like hourglass shape, and then the next one over there's like they seem to be opposite one another. I'm you know how I am, buddy. I'm seeing something in here that I'm having a really hard time.
You're gonna have to
draw it on there for you.
Yeah, you're gonna have to draw it and take a picture, because you should have some left. Do you have any copies left?
Well, no, I do have copies left, but I could just do this digitally. My phone just died.
Oh, I was gonna say that might be the best way. Just sketch it on there real quick, take a picture, and share it with us.
Let me try. Let me
plug
see
your phone in.
It's plugged in. All right, let me see.
Okay. Well, when you get to it, let us know. I can continue until then. Is that good?
Yeah. Apologize.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. As soon as we get back to that, we'll get back to that. All right. So you can see the similarities here, and it produces this the galactic bulge. This is also known as a quasar. Quasars are another name for black holes, or Z-pinch or Bennett pinch, depending on the school of thought where you're integrated.
I like Z-pinch.
Yeah, me too. So this shows a bunch of stuff about this. Anyway, we can get back to this or go to and just continue, because I'm fascinated by shapes and patterns, and I'm just going to keep going through this and see how often we see these patterns. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here, show some more of that. Okay, some more of that. We went through these already. Now I'm going to go to Skype so as to get concise and straight to the point. What's this? Right here. And open up these images that I shared. This is what I'm pulling out of the Dougherty set. And I've created 5 new ones, but these are all from the original one. Now you'll see Nassim Harameyn's dual torus, or he claims it as his model here. And as you can see, the dual torus nests perfectly inside of here with, we didn't get into Eric Learner's plasmoid model yet, but we will. But this is the same kind of pretty much same kind of concept. So here would be a cross section of the plasma column, and here's the plasma column. And what you have here is kink instability. Kink instability is the wrapping around of the azimuthal current that comes around, and sheaths and sheets that come out. And this is, according to Eric Learner's galactic plasmoid model, you get the current comes out of the poles for at least 100,000 years with beams pulsating every 10,000 years or so. So every 10,000 years you would get a brightening of the galactic center, like we just witnessed here in our lifetimes last year, I think. The brightening of the galactic center, Sagittarius A is our central galaxy black hole, or Z-pinch. So it brightened. That's when the charge comes together and kisses here, or pinches, and it just brightens. And it does that apparently every 10,000 years. And so the cross section would be similar to this, but this is more similar to how the gas is helical. Last couple weeks, we saw there was an article that came out showing the gas in the band of the Milky Way is helical, like a helical hot filament, and see the pattern goes through that as well, really well. So we'll get to my next image here, and these are all pulled directly out of the Dougherty set, as you can see from here. And this is just one harmonic, one filament. So there's nested filaments inside of that and subnested, so it could really have any type of almost an infinite amount of different types of charge come out of the central galactic bulge, and that accounts for all the varying different types of stars and formations that we see, because there's uniqueness on all scales of everything, including every star and every atom, I think. And this is what this is showing as well. So you can see here, this nests. There's the nesting winding filament that's bound inside of this filament inside of filament. And you have braided plasma columns, or nested Birkeland currents is what this is. And you can see the puddle, like what happens with a puddle, the rippling, as a helical winding corkscrew. If I could zoom in here. Because I've seen spherical models of puddles and how puddles move in a drop of water, but this is a helical model of puddles and how puddles radiate outward based off of helical winding. So the winding is the perturbation of the helix. And that's what all things are starting to show here, is the perturbations that we see in the ether. Because if nothing's moving, the universe could quite be just projections of simulations of motion, and nothing could be moving, or everything could be moving infinitely fast. And it wouldn't matter either way with either paradigm. We're faced with the fact that there's perturbations that are pulsating inside of these plasma columns and plasma tubes. I would call it spires, spicules, plasma spires. Same thing happens with controlled cavitation with bubbles.
I see so much symbolism here, buddy. To me, it looks like there's a 4-leaf clover. Again, I'm just imagining if you could look out into the cosmos and it was lit up, how some of the symbolism of the different cultures, could have been derived by what they actually saw out there. And that, again, every time I look at your work, I see symbolism that just covers the world. Even this one here, that's circular with the four, I guess what you got kind of the four ways here. That I see symbolism on a bunch of churches that look like that. I see Celtic crosses.
Yes, I feel holy when I look at this image. I feel church-like. I feel mosques. I feel all sorts of different holy architecture. I guess. And what's ironic about the whole thing is it is holy. It's hollow. The whole thing is hollow.
Yeah.
The center. There's no center. No one's at the throne.
Clever wordplay, sir.
Behold, the throne is hollow, and no one's sitting there, because the God and the Lamb are the throne, and all is one, and we all come out wrapped around it.
If we actually had the ability to see some of these structures in space, we would see them like this is one of your theses is seeing these objects or these giant structures, seeing even part of them can create in our minds an image. Seeing the whole thing from a distance at an angle can create a different image than seeing it at a different angle. So it's interesting. I'm in my experiments and work, not experiments, but my exploration is in creating these little sculptures. And what I'm discovering is each sculpture has a different story to tell depending on the angle at which you look at it. And these are foundational structures that you're creating here that really are sort of like primary to the universe. But as they exist in the universe, they could express any number of different images or ideas to us.
Yes.
And I think that's what's interesting, is that's where the variety comes in, is in the eye of the beholder. And also, you're looking at, in your image here, you're looking at a very straight designed sort of an image. And in space, in reality, these things would be much more organic looking, and slight bends and twists in different directions. And all of that creates sort of all the diversity and the uniqueness that we see as well. So the foundational structures that you're creating are expressed infinitely in the universe.
Yes, I think when you were talking, it reminded me of that satellite that we sent out with images of humans and information about quasars and black holes or whatever they are. You guys know that first image that we sent out to space?
Yes.
That reminded me of this. And if we sent this out and some of this information, it might be even more recognizable than some of the shit that we put on that image.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean?
You mean instead of the porn movies that we sent out?
Yeah. These are male and female sexed coils. They're helical knots, and in knot theory, when you study knot theory, this is what they study, and that's in mathematics. And also, when you study integrated information theory, you start to understand that the whole thing is based off of knots and manifolds, and this is how torus this can be thought of as one torus just twisted. It's one donut, so it's one. It has both positive and negative Gaussian curvature, and I can't remember if it is totally as one unit, if it is now I'm talking about information. See, I'm not even going to mention it because I don't know that. But anyway, so
that's the stuff we want to hear, though, dude.
Well, I didn't want to say something and not be exact. I want to make sure that I know what I'm talking about.
Well, I think it's fascinating that you point out that this is actually a donut, and so even though it doesn't appear like a donut, I see what you're saying, that it is ultimately it would follow some of the same physics laws as a regular kind of, for lack of a better word, donut, and that's fascinating.
Okay, so I'm going to look up the Gaussian curvature of a donut, and then we'll figure out the Gaussian curvature of this. Okay, this is what's up. Oh, that was the answer right there. The Gaussian curvature can also be negative, as in the case of the hyperboloid, or the inside of a torus. Okay, negative curvature on the inside, positive curvature on the outside, depending only on distances that are measured on the surface, not on the way it is isometrically embedded in Euclidean space. Okay, so there should be some more images here. We could even type in helical knot. So you start to get manifolds like this, and you start to get bubble sculpting and different things that I'm working on, and a lot of mathematicians are working on. And I'm discovering new shapes every day. And I implore everyone to do the same. And that's what I'm trying to do here. We got some background noise, guys. Someone's got to mute their mic. All right, that's a lot better. Gorgeous things like this, like shells. Look at that. Pilot Denny's surface. I mean, all these things have names. This is in the Dougherty set. This right here. We've seen that spicule. What is the name of this guy? Denny's surface. Who is Ulysses Denny? Okay. Wow. This stuff is gorgeous. I'm glad I stumbled on this.
Did you see the name Maths by a Girl? That's kind of cool.
I love having girls on the show. I wish the other three would answer and they would take over. Let's see. So these are fun. Anyway, so okay, I could get lost in this for hours. So anyway, you can see, okay, how about we just type in Gaussian curvature of a helical knot.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm being very indulgent here, but could you go back down to where you were with the maths on the right-hand side of your screen? There was an image that in the middle, on the bottom, below the main one in the middle. Related images.
This?
The first three.
Over here?
No, the one in the middle, it says untitled document right there. Breathe surface, try to make untitled document. Can we look at untitled document?
That's interesting.
Okay, that's a sculpture. I'm making that sculpture right now.
Nice!
Yeah, wow. Okay, I had an epiphany just now. Yeah,
Dude,
I'm literally
inspiring me.
Oh, yeah, that weirds me out.
Yeah, this means something like Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
It's exactly what. No, that is exactly this experience I'm having. Is that yeah, and
this is what I was talking about last week with this is the phi. This is what I call the grandfather vortex when I'm referring to the taxonomy of opposed spiral vortices and the nesting of the taxonomy of opposed spiral vortices. This is the innermost, what is it, a grandchild? Yeah, grandchildren. Because then there's parents and then there's grandparents above it that nest on top of this hierarchically as they stack. So, and we were talking about this, these are equal, but what you want to do is you want to make it so that it's phi, so that one is preponderant in one more curvature than the other, and then you have phi right in the center. And then you would have a life vortex and a death vortex, and just that shape would probably produce really good energy, I suppose. Like the Vajra. If you guys have ever held a Vajra, have you guys held a Vajra or seen one?
Oh yeah, I've never held one, but I've seen plenty of.
Oh
Vajras.
my,
yeah.
I have one around my neck right now, dude.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. I collected those years ago before I knew what they were. I have them all over my bags as pulls.
Yeah.
There's so much energy inside of them. They're very good. And I think it's a Dorji. Dorji, I think it might be pronounced different, but Vajra, and that is diamond or lightning in the Sumerian culture.
Nice.
Okay, and I've done that geometrically. I have that up in the Walter Russell Museum right now, my geometric representation right out of the Dougherty set of those Vajras everywhere. All right, so let's hop into these pictures, back to these pictures where we were at. And I'm going to skip past a couple more of mine and get back into Eric Learner's model of a plasmoid. But before I do that, I want to go back actually and read what's on the bottom here. So let me tell you what the title of this is. It is Geometry of Nucleosynthesis, Transmutation, Plasmoid Quasar, Active Galactic Nuclei, and Nucleogenesis within the Dougherty Network. So that's how we believe that matter is made and created, which is the nucleosynthesis. Okay. So I'll get back to Eric Learner's model here. This is one of his drawings.
Nucleosynthesis. That's quite a word.
I know.
imagine we'll be hearing that word more often in the near future.
Oh yeah, definitely. We can see nucleosynthesis already, which is like transmutation. They're kind of synonymous. If you think of matter as gyroscopic and that each element turns into each other element as they add and subtract different parts, which is what I think happens. They cascade into each other. They're emergent. The elements are emergent, and like Walter Russell was talking about, and then you have the inert gases that go out. Anyway, so you can see this would be the galactic rotation. You had the protogalactic cloud. This looks like that's how it forms. This is an image of, let me turn over. Where's my here? That's the plasmoid. Eric Learner's model of a plasmoid, which is magnetic self-compression, where you can work charge in this way in the lab to the point where it turns into bundles, and these helical coils or filaments start to form. And since it was formed in the lab, we suppose that it's scalable and can be created, or he supposes that it's scalable and can be created on a galactic level. So this is Eric Learner's drawing, probably from his patent or whatever he's doing here. You can see the nested columns that my drawing so perfectly and accurately with can't think of the words right now, but it accurately represents. This is a like a preschool drawing compared to some of the stuff that I'm showing here.
Eric Learner's cute, but he's not as good as you are.
Well, I stumbled into this, guys. This is literally a direction that it's because of the geometry. The only reason I'm here is because of this set, and this was because God put his hand on me, and I never stopped, and I'm not gonna stop. I'm gonna keep exposing. But it's a lot different.
I'm being funny, of course, and that's kind of my job since I don't actually have a science degree. But the truth of the matter is that you've taken the next step, and that's what science does.
Yeah.
We stand on the shoulders of the assholes that came before us. So that's what we do, and that's what you're doing, and I couldn't be more impressed.
Well, I mean, look at these drawings. I didn't know these existed. I seen these drawings, and then I looked at the Dougherty set, and I'm like, oh, they're all right here. on every single scale. What
Well,
size
yeah,
do you want? What
look
size
at
hole do you want in the center? And I'll tell you where Earth is on the outside. You know, it's predictive. The geometric set of the Dougherty network and the Dougherty set is predictive beyond comparison to any. That's why it's accurate, because it is inverse square law projective scaling. And every single element here is drawn directly out of the Dougherty network. This is a square within a square within a square. This is what we're looking at. Where is the square within a square? It's not. I didn't put it on this drawing. I was gonna. Oh, right here. There it is. The secret to it all right here. Number S. Inverse square, inverse cube scaling. Then you get these pinches that happen every so 10,000 years, according to Eric Learner's model. And you can take this model and scale it up to Halton Arp's model, and his model starts to talk about them braiding and actually creating life. My model goes on to actually show that the duck is in here, the bird is in here, your face is in here. Heather found the human in here. Heather found the lion's face. Anything that you can, she found a bunch of other stuff. And it's not only Heather that's finding stuff. It's people finding the network itself builds the plasmoids itself nested inside of itself. It's self-similar recursions. It's fractals, filaments, and frequencies. That's what's going on here.
Okay, well, I put those images in the chat. I just took your pictures and layered them on top of each other.
So this would be a rotating side view of it, clearly. And science, mainstream science is showing this now. They're not backing down. They're starting to show this stuff.
I noticed the veil is thin, you know, the suggestions. I watch a lot of not a lot, but I watch some mainstream stuff. And I was just watching a documentary last night where people were talking about the failure of science and higher learning institutions to actually produce anything of value. And the guy was going on and on about how, you know, science seems to be stagnant and stuck, and we haven't learned anything new since, you know, X, you know, date time. And I thought, you know, even if you don't understand the electric universe paradigm, if you're smart, you understand something's wrong. And that's what was fascinating to me, was these guys, really, really, really smart guys, you know, literally going on and on and on about how our institutions are all stagnated and we're all perpetuating lies, and it's self-perpetuating systems that don't sort of learn anything new. And I just, it was so heartening to me to hear someone who has no idea about electric universe theory talking about the obvious need for and reality of electric universe theory. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we're filling gaps and plugging holes of niches, literally. We've been hinting at this for eons with Mercury, the messenger, the caduceus as the medical staff, and just the symbol is healing itself. Just holding the Vajra in your hand, having it around your neck, is shape power. It's energy. I don't care what anybody else thinks. I don't give, honestly. I know this. I've felt them. I've touched them. And the same can be said about different rocks and different crystals. And get your Uperlite. It's good stuff. Shout out to Eric Wintemaki.
What light? What kind of light?
Uperlite. It's a rock, and around here.
Oh, Uperlite.
Yeah.
Got it.
I'm gonna agree with you on the crystals. When my wife first started getting into crystals years ago, I wasn't so into them, but my older sister was, and she started collecting these crystals, and it did make a difference to me. We've got crystals everywhere in our house now, and I feel a difference. And even learning that there's the piezoelectric property of quartz, for example, and you can simply put pressure on it and generate a measurable output just by squeezing a crystal with a pair of pliers. Learning that, and then even doing experiments with materials, definitely solidified to me that there is charge right under our feet.
Yeah, speaking of charge and energy, look, first thing that pops up, whoop, whoop, schlong.
That's a real hard-on.
I saw how fast you scrolled past that picture.
And then I'm like, fuck that, I'm going back for more.
You're right, exactly. I knew, I could see exactly what's going on in your head.
Whole new rock hard.
Oh.
Jeez.
So crystal, diatoms, glass, energy. Should we be eating diatoms? Should we be supplementing ourselves with algae? The answer is yes. And algae. Should we be eating different dielectric minerals and crystals? We've been doing it forever. That's what the grinding stone's for. We've ground up all. Dude, you think we're not the first ones to grind up diamond and eat it, and grind up what is it, gold? Grind gold down and eat gold and snort gold.
Yeah. What is your take on monoatomic gold, buddy, or anybody? What do you guys? What's the consensus on that? Because it's touted as the best thing ever. The powder that comes from breaking down gold. Apparently, Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yeah. What's the name of that stuff? There's
Well, it's called monoatomic gold.
Yeah. Monoatomic gold.
One of the. It's the only phrase that comes to mind, but it has quite a history, and I don't know. Go ahead.
So gold is a 8 atom molecule, right? It stacks in 8, so they take it apart into single bits, and then it's supposed to be digestible that way.
Yeah, they make bread. They made bread with it, apparently.
Manna actually is biblically is what fell from heaven. And there's something unique about the fact that the Israelites were crying in the desert because when it mixed with the manna, the salt, the actual saline that was coming out of the eyes, mixing with the manna, was miraculous. And that's what made the monoatomic gold. It actually, it's literally mineralized one-celled gold that is proof throughout history that that's the reason why people were living 300, 400 to 900 years biblically. And that's the reason why Moses was so pissed when he come down from the mountain and they had taken and made the golden calf, because why? They had used a third of the food source, a third of the manna. They had, cultivated it and forged it into the calf. And that's why he ground it up and fed it back to a third of them that were en route with it all. And people don't understand that. People think, Moses was really cruel. But in fact, he was giving them exactly what they wanted. He said, you want a golden calf? Cool. You can eat that for your rations for the year. And then, the other biblical account is that the earth opened up and swallowed the other third, and only 1/3 were left to even deal with. And but that's all because it was monoatomic. That was their food source. We're supposed to live on that and colloidal silver and copper in the brain. We're like 60, 67. Think about that, 66.66% copper in the brain. And yet we're being inundated with yes. I found 66? That out from, yes, it's that much copper.
Okay, I'm fact checking that.
Yeah, go ahead. There's that much, if you drink out of a copper ladle even, that's one of the reasons why a lot of these things have been changed, just copper or something, they changed up all these things. They don't want you to be healthy. So you want, and now imagine is anybody here an electrician in any capacity?
Improper. Copper oxidation has been linked to several neurological disorders. Improper.
Thank you very much.
Improper.
Now,
copper plays hang on one second. Copper plays an essential role in the health of the human brain. Okay, go ahead, continue.
physical world, if you're a electrician, you know dang well not to put copper and aluminum directly together. They have to have a brass coupler in between, okay? And that buckler keeps them from meeting directly because you'll get corrosion. Now, does that make sense? That they already know this? This is 150 something, 200 years old, but yet they're showering us with aluminum. Now they're also showering us with barium and rather than you're looking at the manganese that's coming down on top of all that, you've got a Molotov cocktail for synthetic. Why do you think it's coming down with cancers and having all these bone cancer,
synthetic what?
cancer? Children.
My problem with this theory is
synthetic bone marrow. The strontium, when you mix strontium with the barium, it now becomes a radioactive strontium, and strontium is the #1 thing that makes up bones.
Okay,
so
now
they're
this is
pouring it
important.
out of the sky. Go ahead.
Okay, this is really, really, really important, and you're blowing my mind. And I want to continue on this rabbit hole here for a minute.
Go ahead.
Okay, so should we be ingesting monatomic copper?
Yes. Basically, yes, you should be.
Look at this.
Now, you have to be careful with the kind of copper you take in, and you really only need resonant. You know
You're breaking up.
Like the gold at the autoatomic. Pardon?
You're breaking up a little bit.
Am I coming in?
Yeah, your
clear
signal's
now?
not the best. Yeah.
Is it coming up now?
It's good, but it's just breaking up a little bit. But we can make up what you're saying. So keep going, please.
I'll try to go different. The how this is. So anyway, we really need the electrolysis of it all. We need to have the the vibration of everything. And the carbon molecules, all that stuff is precise. That's why the periodic timetable is set up the way it's set up, in the layering that it is from the royals all the way down to your heavy metals.
Okay.
We need to have more salts, or cell salts.
Good salts for our body, good copper. Okay, so let me list off a few. Let me real quick list off a few things here because I don't know if you can see the screen or not. I typed in which foods are high in copper. It says liver, organ meats such as liver are extremely nutritious. Oysters.
Now, spirulina is your best. Your spirulina because it's your most phosphorant. Shiitake
Spirulina.
mushrooms, again, another great one. Nuts and seeds. Now, walnuts are really rich in copper. And amazingly enough, walnuts, my brother is going to now, he makes peanut butter. He actually made me a real peanut butter the other day on this really cool Vitamix thing. And it's nothing else. He threw in peanuts and we got peanut butter. And now he's going to do it for walnuts with me next. But I want to do a walnut because walnuts actually are great brain food, and they release a lot of copper. Now, everything that we can do and get can be done alchemically through salt water. Now, H2O2, one of the other, the first conversation we had, the first episode, we talked about H2O2 and ionized water and living water. Now, everything can be derived from the sea. Everything can be derived from salt water. I mean, it literally is. So what I'm talking about is that we're going to come to a point in time when we learn alchemy. Elementary children should be learning this stuff. IPS in high school should be IPS in elementary school, because the human mind is a genius at 4 to 5 years old, and by the time they get to be 18 years old, they got a second grade education. I mean, that's just preposterous, and that's real statistics, real facts. So we need to cultivate it when kids are young and they want to ask why, and they really give a damn about why. And but doing so, we can extrapolate all this from salt water, and that's what they do with the Hadron Colliders. They have learned to take and literally set the frequencies, and they're making auto now. You'll see that soon we're going to come back on a raw mineral standard. It's not going to be called the gold standard anymore because it'll sound like we're regressing to the gold standard. And since everybody shunned it, we're going to be a raw mineral, and that's why you have all these resonant cameras now, the imaging cameras that are basically imaging Earth. They're seeing how much raw material everybody has, so you can't lie about it as far as imaging goes. And then your value of your nation will be based upon that. But the Hadron Colliders are catching up on gold. There's 60 of them in the Sesame program, not Sesame Seed program. But you can look up Sesame program, and it's all about the Hadron Collider, 60 of them. And the last one that got put online was in Jordan, and there was 5 different Arab countries that went in on it, and it was placed in Jordan. They did the facilitating, and they were given an old Hadron Collider from another facility, and that was donated by, and that was the last one I know. That was March 16th or 17th of 2017 and 16. And that one went online, the last one I know of the 60. But you know, there's over 10,200 and some odd Hadron Colliders around the world, from anywhere from 2 inches to 2 miles to 3 miles wide. Isn't that a mind blower?
Wow.
Yeah.
How many of them are there?
Over 10,000. I
Yeah.
counted up like, 90, but that goes from everything from, like, we're talking 2-inch, you know, I mean, little experiment things like guys do in their garage, or, you know, I mean, but these things are, you know, they're part of all kinds of different medical research labs, you know, but there's over 10,200 and some odd of them, over 100 of them that are miles wide, 60 of them part of the Sesame program alone. Go ahead. Some young lady was that Heather?
Yeah, go ahead, Heather.
Oh, I was just thank you. Excuse me. I was just going to say that I read recently that they're planning on building one under New York. That may be something to look into.
I guarantee you do, because if you look at the CERN reports, I watch CERN all the time, and when they turn CERN online, the only one they really want to let you know about is the one over there in Geneva. But I've noticed that, and you got to watch it really carefully. And I had to watch from the NOAA satellites, and then I was actually triangulating that to the movement in the North Pole. So you have to look at the polar movement and you know, the wobble up there. And it led me to this CERN report. And I started noticing it. And this one gentleman was talking about how it was echoing, you know, like CERN was coming on, and then like he was saying how the tremors were felt around the world. And I started looking at that, and he was in his presentation of this, he was showing how Maryland was being affected by it. But then I watched it long enough to notice there was a variance. And in that variance, I noticed an algorithm, and it became an echo. So that meant that there's an echo, that means it doesn't coming from the same triangulated point. It makes sense? You know what I mean? So I noticed there was a different source. The second source had to be in Rhode Island somewhere. If you look at it, Texas was the first one. That was 3 miles wide. But they shut that one down under public funding and said it never existed. It exists now, because what do you think cooked Houston when it went under all that water, 5 feet of water? They opened up the gates and they cooked Houston and Arizona. The second part of that one is so large that it's in Arizona. Can you really fathom that? Part of that Hadron Collider that's in Texas is the smaller wheel, you know, the smaller centrifuge. That, you know, you get the bigger wheel, you know, that's ramping it up, and then it ramps it into the little one, and then it really accelerates it, you know, compresses it. Well, that second one is actually on the border between Texas and Arizona. And you can look up the thermal imaging reports that coincide with the rain of the storm and everything. You look at the storm, you have to layer like acetates. If you could take your mind, everyone here, if we could take our mind and look at these things that they're doing as different layers in an acetate form. Like, remember the old encyclopedias? You could look into the frog, and it had like this, you know, all the pictures that were on the clear acetate, and you got to see the veins, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, that's what I do with the Dougherty set all the time. That's the secret to bubble sculpting, acetate.
That's exactly what you take me to, buddy. When I look at your work, it takes me all the way back to a child and that magnificence. I remember that's how I figured out how to rebuild the motor. You know, they had a section in there, and the one that had an engine, you know, and everything was exploded view and broke down diagrams. And then, you know, so that's kind of how I see your work as well. It breaks down that way. So you have to look at the CERN reports. You have to look at the tremoring. You have to look at the shifts in the poles. You have to look at thermal imaging during the time of that storm. And you'll see a larger one and a smaller one. Then you have to know the fact that there's a patent on this whole thing. And that's where the Manhattan Project started. The Manhattan Project. Go ahead.
So are they making gold? Why is there so many? Okay, these are my questions.
Yes, they are. Let's answer the first one. Yes, they are making gold.
Okay.
Absolutely. They're making pure gold.
Yeah, because I heard that they came out and leaked it last year, and we were talking about this in the Electric View a couple of years ago about how you can make gold, and then we started talking about gold being made in faults, and then the article started coming out about gold being found in faults during earthquakes. Miraculously, gold is produced instantaneously from the electrical
Yes.
discharge during
Yes,
earthquakes.
thank you for that. I love meter. I call it metered science. We really need to narrow that down because when we say metered science, that's let us know that you can only gauge and wage what's actually existing. See what I mean? Everybody wants to
Yeah.
live the religion.
Electricity,
We need to use it as a
basically,
tool.
charge moving through telluric currents and charge moving through the the Earth creates all sorts of different veins, all of the different veins. The charge moves from one place, reorganizes the atoms and the atomic structure, and then the charge moves from another place, reorganizes instantaneously. Boom.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And it all plays with the triangulation of fifths, the circle of fifths. Harmonically, musically, frequency exchange wise, everything is played in the same. And I think we were talking, I think Heather was mentioned at one time, and I kind of chimed in about the vowels and stuff. I actually had a beautiful conversation with a Native American the other day and gave respect and reverence to the fact that the Hopis keep, the truest of the dialects. And if we look at that, I think we talked about the spiraling. Remember I told you about the stones that are set up at the A and the A sharp and the B and what I mean? And everywhere they find these gold mines, there's spiraling being done. There's this spiraling. In the Celtic Nordic areas, it's more of the masculine with the square phi,
so you're suggesting we're inducing these currents by placing certain types of rocks in certain places.
Yes, and that we're drawing it out of the earth harmonically. And
yes,
they
and
know
it's
that yes. Thank you. Notice they've never told anybody that South America or South Africa was ever inhabited. It's always been, oh, it's the plains, there's nothing there. And if you go down there, those are the best spiral stones you've ever seen.
Yes, Adam's calendar is down there.
Pardon?
Adam's calendar is down there.
Yes. Now that's in the eastern quadrant. Now that has the most geomagnetic thermal energy. When you stand in that Adam's calendar, I don't know if you know that or not. When you stand in that calendar, if you have like a electrometer for magnetism, it actually reads the metering shows that you should be burning risk, that you're like 2,800 degrees, 3,800 degrees, like that's what it's telling you should be at because of the amount of electricity going through you. You know what I mean? It's that much of a energy, and that's one of the oldest nodal points on the Earth. Now they have another one that's a pile of rocks in Canada that they say is even older, but I mean it could be. I'm not going to argue it. We talk, a couple thousand years. But yes,
where's Adam's calendar exist? Where's this place?
It's like by Somalia, in the lower eastern, southeastern portion of Africa, by Cape Horn and up. And as you come back up around the Horn, you're coming back up to Somalia, where they have all the pirating ships and stuff, and all those problems. That happens about maybe 200 miles east of Adam's calendar, and it's right off the shoreline. It's right off the shoreline too. Have you brought a picture up of it?
Yeah, it just looks like a city to me.
Yeah, but there's
it just looks like a walled city.
Yeah, but there's actually a center point to it that's actually got, like, I think the one off to your right, whatever. It's like somewhere. It might be that one down in the bottom second, right in there. That might be the one.
I gotta close a couple of.
Okay, but it's actually just a series of stones, and somebody thought enough to check the electromagnetic current that's running through it, and it literally says like it's supposed to be hotter than a volcano.
These stone circles, I'm sorry to interrupt. These stone circles were the first thing I thought about when we started learning about the star forts.
Yeah.
These are. Is that what came to your mind, buddy, too?
I never knew about these, and now they're starting to get
all over South Africa, and they are.
Yes.
They are. They're likely energetically created, and their cultures have built on top of the existing structures that were there. So if you pull all the rocks away, you see that there's a structure that existed that these little circle things were created on top of. They are I think that they are sonic, whereas the star forts were more electric. That's my suspicion. But
No, you're absolutely correct. No, your suspicion is correct. They rang these things out. Somebody took a tuning fork down there. I don't know how it happened, but they somehow or another, one of them resonated a B, and then they thought that was odd. But then when the one, then there was like a C. But when the one resonated a perfect 174A sharp, this guy was blown away, and he's like, "Whoa!" So he started testing all the rocks in his spiral thing, and the actual layout of these stones in their formation was important, as well as the fact that they were in a phi ratio. Now, they thought they were dwellings, but they weren't. They were actually drawing out gold. And I stumbled on this when I literally put
no evidence whatsoever that they were dwellings. None.
There's no pottery, there's no nothing. So they were specifically put there for harmonizing the gold out of the area. Now, Peru has these. The lower areas of Argentina has these with those deep clay dwellings. San Francisco actually had them. And I only know all this stuff on San Francisco because my uncle had one of the best, the largest gold mines in San Francisco, which they confiscated because we had no other family there. He was a real prick, I'm just going to say, God bless and rest his soul. But nobody liked him. He went there and nobody lived in California. So I think my take on it, I think they snuffed him and took his gold mine and paid for the rebuild of San Francisco. That's my take on it. I got no real,
How do you guys feel? How do you guys feel about the idea of, because I've really been looking a lot into these stone circles and megaliths, and so some of them are projections outward and some of them are projections inward, and I feel like that there may be exactly that, like some places where charge enters and some places where charge exits, because in order for it to be a successful machine, it would have to be a alternating current. If it was a direct current, it would probably blow itself up.
Yes, so the Earth itself shows that. Yes, on a recessive diametric pole.
So the entire globe would be these points where this is available.
Yeah. You just brought in the beautiful segue. We could talk about Bermuda in this way. We talked about it before. Bermuda and New Zealand. New Zealand is the creative energy, the outward, the centrifugal. It's bursting out creative. It's putting out lava flow at 1.618. It's inducting and folding out. That's the snake eating its tail, as we mentioned about it. I'd love to have that conversation with you, even with all my diagrams and stuff out. Me, you and Buddy maybe sit down in the area and really share this goodness, because it needs to get out. And then the in part is over in Bermuda. And that's the reason why everything gets sucked down in Bermuda, and there's all the ships down in the bottom of the thing and the airplanes and everything else, because it has to do with negative dielectrics and literally the recessive pole of our Earth working off, especially under the preponderance. I love that word because I had to look that up, and it really explains a lot without any defensive points to it. You're just having the turbulence. Why? Because you're having a sharing and an exchange of energy. There's a preponderance there. So in that preponderance of the two polar axes, the dominant recessive axes that are going on, the exchanges between New Zealand, Bermuda, and our North and South Pole. Now, as that keeps changing, we're spinning all the time. And you can look at this in Saturn. Saturn is, as you put out, Buddy, that it's got the gravity of vortices, several vortices. Our Earth does the same exchange. And as it keeps triangulating and it picks up all these different exchanges, it's putting them out through Bermuda and through New Zealand and all these different points. And they know enough to tap into these things. And the United States military has military bases on every one of them, and they're harnessing it at 440. And as you put, dear, that with the spiraling, they honed in it for different meaning, either copper, for gold, for magnesium. Africa has one of the largest magnesium or manganese mining quarries in the world. India and China as well. Australia is a distant fourth, but they quarry the manganese out of Australia the most.
Michigan has some underwater Stonehenge type sites, and we are huge deposits of iron and copper here. Yes, we are. Yeah, we got Copper Harbor, absolutely. Iron Mountain, you absolutely. And here's a beautiful thing. Now you look at the limestone at the very bottom. See, limestone is one of your beginning stages of the calcification of
quartzite of salt. See, and that's what I was saying. We can take everything right back, and it flips right back to the
Right.
ocean. Everything
That was
goes.
going to be another thing I was going to ask your point. I was going to make would be the huge deposits also of fresh water as opposed to the salt water, because salt water is more of a current handles much differently in salinated water, obviously, than it does in fresh water. So the idea that there's something different happening here with the metals and the charge and the way it's being handled, because we are also very sandy, which would be like the silica aspect of it. So the way that I kind of see it is the light can travel through, the energy can travel through the silica material, right? It's more of like a conduit for information to pass through as opposed to a charge barrier.
Yes.
You know,
Well,
the metal.
in Silicon Valley will give you that. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we are absolutely crystalline beings. We are silica beings. And we had that SETI communication, that's supposedly the crop circle next to the SETI thing. That was what they were telling us. They were like, hey, you guys are great and all, but you're not really carbon-based beings. You're burning carbon, but you're crystalline-based. You're silica-based, water-based.
Can I relate a point here?
Go ahead.
I want to throw this in there just so I don't forget.
Please do.
We were talking about healthy bone and healthy consumption. I really like to try to keep this centered so that it's beneficial for everybody, and mental health healing, physical health healing. I like to keep that central on the show. So let me just bring up a couple of points here, and then maybe you could go into some details.
Go ahead, because that does open up for the next point we should all be paying attention to, which is something that is subversive with blue light. Go ahead.
So we should be having a lot of zinc and a lot of copper, and we went through the just touching base on some of the stuff from earlier in the show. We went through and we showed the good foods that you should be eating for copper, for your brain, for a healthy promotion of brain and neurosynapsis and neurogenesis of your thoughts, which actually I wrote this down earlier. Are thoughts pulsating? Do thoughts themselves perturb? Are there
oscillating current? Yes.
Yeah. So most likely they have us and we don't have them, and they spiral wound cork their way into your brain, like along on your Michael Duffy shared.
Well, through DC current, they all come through the eye in DC current. That was one of the reasons why. I'm just going to say, yeah. That's one of the reasons why I'm glad that we went with Tesla's model instead of Edison's. Edison model was literally going to cause everybody to be sick. That's why they were pissed about Tesla, and he got shut out, because they didn't really want his work out there, because DC current is what the eye works at. And if they interrupted everything at a DC current, which is very dangerous for one, but for two, it would have interrupted and made everybody very sick, and it would have been absolutely terrible for society in itself. In a nutshell, we went out and recovered from it. But alternating current allows us to go, because the eye. Now, the first thing, let me address to what you're saying. We're talking food. Let's go right. I want to get to the root of it before then. What I've been shown, we're children of light. Okay, and that being said, again, DC current coming through the eyes. I get the kingdom of heaven. Like the child and the pupil of the eye are one and the same. They're called the exact same thing. So the child of the eye is the receptor of light. Now in the morning you get AUV. I've been living for the last 9 years now on a lot of light meditation, breathing meditation, and getting in my solar gazing in the morning, afternoon, and night, which is remarkable how the human body is set up geometrically, which seen on geometric view. In the morning, we get the AUV, which is all your infrareds. That's why everything's a big grainy orange and reds, and you know what I mean? The ambers. Those are the AUV. Those are infrareds. Those are your calciums. All right. So before I get too involved in this, the best thing that anybody could put an infrared bulb in your home. They come in. Right now, I'd like to make this. I want to work with somebody or many people, in fact, on this note. Again, I keep being called to this trilogy between us, you, me, and Heather, buddy, for this idea. But we need to make it so where infrared light bulbs are available for everybody. Right now, they come in like 150 watt and 250 watt in a flood form, in a flood lamp. But right there, if you look at
infrared is damaging though too.
well, yeah, you don't want to be exposed to it all the time, but you want to make sure you get like a 20-minute sun lamp. You know what I mean? And it's the imbalance of infrared that is harmful. All right. When you're talking about a warm light rate, now what I do is I usually put mine in the
You muted there
corner of the two walls. Yeah. Oh, did I mute?
for a second. Continue. Yeah, you're good.
I probably cut out. Like I said, the weather, the house, and everything. So I kind of pointed it into the corner of the upper ceiling and the two walls, but in any corner of your room, and it diffuses the light. And you just want the excitogens going on. You just want to excite the neutrinos and proteinos in the air, because what's happening is you get all this blue light saturation. And this is the most important word any of us here we could share, learn, anything. I'm going to send one in I'll put one up at the geometric view, on the page, in a group. Is irony, oxidation, stress. Now, number 64 on one of these circuit of research papers that I follow, I can't remember the gentleman's name now. I'm sure I'll butcher it, so I'm not even going to try, but I'll set the page up. Number 64 is the one that talks about irony, oxidation, stress, and manganese. Now, that's how I found it, was attached to my manganese research and these latest storms that have been going out, and the purple and the magenta that are in the sky. They're learning to do these sounds that they're making and put the manganese in them. So now you make people volatile. Now, that being said, when we get flooded, don't drink milk, because it's got vitamin D that's saturating your peripheral tissue in the meat. And you're sinking it in there. The calcium in there is no good. You can't absorb calcium through milk in a good way anyway. It's all mucus milk. We share calcium through our eyes is what I'm getting at. So we want to get that infrared through the eyes at least a 20-minute in the morning. Solar gaze is the best way to do it. And then when you get the AUV, now you can absorb the UV in the afternoon, and then you get the UVB, which is the blue light, which is your melatonins, in the evening time. And that's allow you to sleep, allow you to calm. See, good.
Okay. Can you repeat what you were saying about the milk and the meat? So if I eat a steak, how does that interact with milk?
Well, they absolutely impose the vitamin D into that milk. See, the natural cows and everything, we're not supposed to be getting that for that. That's basically liquid protein. You're getting liquid grass. All milk is basically a cow that squeezed all the grass milk, out of the grass, digested it 4 times. It's pre-digested for 1, and then it's a mucus molecule for 2. We're supposed to get it from our own mom's teat, and for at least 3 months, so that we get all the trace minerals in the cell. Okay. They're injecting it into the milk. They're injecting milk. They're putting the calcium and the vitamin D. Why? Because they wanted you to think that it was something good. Okay. The only thing really good about milk is to make cheese out of it, because there's an endorphin that comes out in cheese. That's really cool. And it works with the fermentation in your stomach with the probiotics. And your probiotics and the cheese work absolutely wonderful. And the cream. See, we're not supposed to really have milk per se, but the cream and the cheese at a low proportion ratio, be moderate, of course, but that is good for
every day.
Because it's good fatty. Well, yeah, as long as you're moderate with it, like a fatty. You can't make testosterone without those fatties.
Do you think
that makes sense? You can't make testosterone without those, and you got to do squats to do testosterone. That's another one right there. Any man out there, we should be every exercise you do, every lift, anything you do should have a squat involved in it. Otherwise, you're not doing any good. You're actually putting more iron and stress on your body than you are producing rejuvenated cell tissue. So the iron oxidation stress causes your body to what? Deplete from your calcium in your bones. That's why osteoporosis is up in women. That's why you have. That's one of the reasons why MS and dementia and Alzheimer's is kicking in, because when that change of the calcium and the aluminum now is what? It's corroding the mind. So you're stealing the calcium. Now you're putting in a hyperstasis of events in your body. You're literally hyper accelerating all the Now you're running too much calcium through your body without any bindery. You're adding too much aluminum and without enough zinc. And now you have corrosion of the brain, which causes you to short circuit. Let's add the fact that you've probably eaten way too many donuts, cookies, ice cream. Follow me? Any of that stuff there, your sugars.
Do you have a specific diet yourself?
Myself, mostly citrus and apples. Everything citrus breaks down into H2O2, hydrogen peroxide, which we need to aid our probiotics. We should have 80% probiotics with 20% candida, which is actually fungus. If you got fungus on your feet, if you get fungus under your nails, right there's a first sign that you're out of imbalance. You are not you're slipped into an acidic. Most people are at anywhere from 4.5 to 5.5 on the acidic scale. We need to be at least at 832 to 939 or 936. And I'm thinking 963 is actually the one. And those numbers correlate with everything Tesla said. And you'll find it in vortex math and everything. 9.36 is actually 9.4, which also rounds into 13 if you do geometry on it. So these, the 13 codex really plays out. There's something special about that. And I tie all my work into that because of a gentleman called J.D. Jeffrey from Ancient Agenda. Very passionate man, and he literally, I had to bend my research around it because through all of ancient sacredness, everything written in stone, it showed up, from the Sphinx to the Giza to Machu Picchu to everything, the H-box, everything you could think of, from Peru to Easter Island to to Stonehenge, 13 places in it all. There's 12 plus 13. There's 12 apostles, but there was one Christ. So, people forget the 13th warrior. There was some movie with Antonio Banderas, same thing. It's the 13th warrior, 13th month of the year. Comes every 39 months is actually the helical calendar. So, there's a birthing gestation period. A woman would know this, Heather would know this, whether you've ever had a baby or not. You would know 39 months is the gestation period. Same thing with the moon. The helical calendar is the only one that's carried that through our history, and that's the reason why it's still perfect to this day. But we really need to pay attention to our salts, our cell salts. I call trace minerals, electrolytes. That's what.
Where do you get your salts? Because I love your diet, and I'm just going to I'm going to get straight to the point and straight to the cut and chase. Because I appreciate you giving us some of the back history. You don't have the best reception right now, and I want to give other people a chance to talk as well. So, my mind, I'm thinking about sun gazing, and how beneficial that is, and how you can get minerals from it, trace minerals. You're saying, because I start seeing floating particles that aren't there when you start sun gazing, and it's like neutrinos or something. I don't know what I'm seeing.
Neutrinos and protinos. That's right. And your electrinos that are coming, right? Like you're literally getting excitogens in there. And
excitogens. That's interesting. I didn't hear. What's an excitogen?
Basically, it's an excited electron molecule. You have a neutrino, protino, and then a neutrino, electrino.
And then you store.
So it's like proteins. It's like electron. But it's actually just it's an ionized field, electrized. It's the photon, basically, but the photon doesn't really exist, because it's always an energy. It's never really here. You don't get that. That's the rare refraction that actually causes everything to be visible. Is that thing that's not ever here. They can't put their finger on it. Nobody can catch it. It's like the elusive rabbit, the elusive weasel. That's the one thing that's making them. That's that particle. And whatever that particle is determines granite, whether it's going to be a feather, whether it's going to be oak, whether it's going to be Buddy, whether it's going to be Heather, whether it's going to be Brian, anybody else on the show. These things are all determined because of that rarefaction. And we need to pay attention to it. We're children of light. And these things come to me. I test them all out. I don't get any research from the world. I go to spirit first. I get it from the collective source. I check it here at the world. I look for affirmations and confirmations, and it's always about 111% correct. And there's no.
Uh-oh.
Was that
Go ahead. Someone have a question?
I thought
Looks
somebody
like
else.
Sandro joined us.
Hi, how are you guys?
All right, Sandro. This is going to turn into a completely new episode. This is right now. I'm seeing 3 episodes, because that was like a whole episode in and of itself.
Yeah.
Right. That was great. So let me kind of interject here, throw some thoughts in.
Round it out. Why don't you round it out? Go right ahead.
Round it out. So Sandro, we were talking about the geometry of basically nucleosynthesis and nucleogenesis, which is how particles and atoms are formed, we suppose, inside of active galactic nuclei. And we went through some geometry here, and I released a new image here showing that this geometry is inherent within the Dougherty set and the Dougherty network, and this is just one level of it, and the levels go out from here and nest inward, which would be different scales of the plasma as it steps up its layers. The geometry of it. Then we went into Eric Learners' model, his model of a plasmoid, which is similar to what is inside the Dougherty set and how active galactic nuclei form on a micro and a macro scale. Heather threw some of these drawings together to show that the responding helical winding chain network by transposing them on top of each other, to show that the galaxy has these not only in the gaseous types of filamentary networks, but also electric filamentary networks like Birkeland currents that we're talking about in the plasma and electric universe. Then we talked about proper food, health, looking into the sun, basically sun gazing, different elements that you can get that you can use to charge your pineal gland, that then reverses and becomes biophotons that come out of your eyes, which is the glow that you see from stars. Coincidentally, we call them in Hollywood stars, or models, or people who have a mission. They have a light in their eyes, and that's biophotons. A lot of these people do not sun gaze, but sun gazing allows it just draws you in naturally. We should be looking and seeking after beauty. So, and the feeling that you get by looking at the sunset, but then again, looking directly at it as it sets and as it rises every day is also a healthy thing to do. Not for too long. You got to take your time, ease your way into it. Don't look too long.
May I say something at that point, what you just talked about right there, buddy, about the time-wise and everything? I absolutely was confirmed through what I'm talking about through the ancient hieroglyphs. Now, the Hindu Vedas and the Vedas actually hinted towards it, but I knew there was something much older than 1800 years. You know what I mean? Because I had found the H2O2 there, and their writing looked a whole lot like the hieroglyphs. So I kind of took that and adopted, went to the hieroglyphs. Now, they don't ever show us all the hieroglyphs. And there's a purpose for that, I'm figuring, because they don't want everybody to read the story or, read the menu, the recipe, you know what I mean, for figuring things out. But they always try to say that they were sun worshipers, and, they always worship the sun. But then there was one clip that I was watching from, one of the ancient, one of them shows, and they showed the guy and he had his hand up. Well, he had the keyhole, and right next to it, they had a blown up version showing a keyhole and showing that the gentleman was actually looking through the keyhole between his index finger and his pointing finger. And the middle finger, and there was a perfect keyhole there. And he put that up there, and he was looking at it at midday. So like between, actually about 2, 3 o'clock, 1 o'clock, somewhere in there. And it showed that he was looking and getting the right amount of UV through that one little tiny pinhole in his hand that shone through where the fingers didn't come together, and he was recharging in the afternoon. Now, they don't tell you that, but then there's another one that shows where the gentleman's got his hands crossed, and that's called pure light. Now, I know that through the 12 stones, and me and you, buddy, talked about that before, about the 12 stones and how you put them together perpendicularly. That's how you find pure light. Now, this dude did it with his, in the hieroglyphs, the hieroglyph showed that he did it with his hands that way and laid his hands, one set of fingers were upright and the other set of fingers were horizontal, and he put them together and did the same thing. Now it only released a pinhole. Now that pinhole in the midday is almost like taking a 20 to 40-minute nap because you're rejuvenating that UV. Now you can't handle any more than that, as we talked about. But they knew these moderate numbers, and they knew the amount that they needed to do to keep being children of light. This is ancient knowledge. This ain't nothing that we're just making up now. And thank God I stumbled into it all, because I thought I was losing my mind. But
Okay.
I just wanted to point that in, that they, this is culturally throughout time that, as you're saying, we should be more involved with the gazing at least 3 times a day, like my, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Go ahead. Thank you for that time.
You're welcome. And we were also talking about ingesting monatomic particles, monatomic crystals, and metals, and how your brain is filled with copper. Apparently, it's a very high percentage of copper. I couldn't find the percentage myself, but what were you saying?
I've heard the vary between the 2 variables of percentage that I've been seeing are anywhere between 60 to 70%. And I thought it was ironic that it was almost 70% for some of them. And you look at 66.7, and then you look at 66.666 as being the number of man. You know what I mean?
Now
I thought that was interesting.
You sound a lot better, so stay where you're at, please.
Yeah, I had to go outside. I had to go outside into the truck.
Get a jacket
I'm
on.
a recovering stroke victim, and I can't be too far away from him. He almost set the house on fire one time, so I got to kind of stay with the guy.
Okay. Okay. Don't put anyone in danger.
No, not at all. I'll keep tight on the ship, man. With all the problems you're having with hearing me, I figured it'd be best to go to a different location.
Okay, perfect. So that's a little bit of a recap, and let me steer us into Sandro here. But before we go into Sandro, I wanted to talk. I'm hearing an echo. Sandro, I think it's on your end.
Yeah, I'm having a problem with the headphone.
Okay.
Let me take it off. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good.
But now I can hear an echo of your maybe laptop or something.
And now?
Hello?
Yeah, I don't know. Apparently I have a problem with the headphone. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but I can also hear another.
Oh, maybe let me see if I can just turn off the sound.
Yeah, turn it off. On one of them.
Turn off the sound.
Now, yeah, that's. I don't hear too much more of an echo. That's good. But now let me see if I can hear you, Sandro. Can you hear me?
His sound is on.
Technical difficulties.
But there's no echo.
Okay, so he's going to work on those technical difficulties right now. And I'm going to talk about this gentleman that Robert Hawthorne shared with Electric Universe Geology. And look at all this. These are fulgurites that turned into glass. And look at how they nested conic cylindrically inside of each other. People are going around the world right now and finding fulgurites everywhere. Leo Wutan, a guy, shipped me one and shipped Neil one and shipped me one that he found in Florida.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's huge. It's like a piece of fried chicken. So
this
Sandro,
looks very much like Gareth's work. The the nested octagons that are in opposite rotations.
Oh yeah.
This is exactly what that it looks like a stone
Yeah.
representation of the shape of an electric lightning bolt.
What we talked about last week. If you look at last week's episode, you'll see what is the geometric
counter-rotating octagons are the shape of an electric lightning bolt.
And there you go. You see it right there, stacks. So if Sandro's back on without an echo, we can take it there.
I just don't know. Hi, can you hear me now?
You got it. You got it.
Yeah,
You're good.
I just don't have a lot to say. I just joined pretty much, out on the blue. So I'd rather listen. I don't know too much about this subject. I think it's fascinating. I'm here more out of curiosity. I guess I've been seeing your images on YouTube, on Facebook for ages. I love them. I think they're beautiful. I guess this theory can account somehow for the dark matter thing, I guess, which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, yeah. Dark matter, dark energy, it doesn't exist in our paradigm of the electric universe.
Because can you explain a little bit, like in a very fast way, like in a very simple way for a kindergarten kid, what are Birken currents and how do you think they work?
Sure.
That would be my only question.
Okay. Let's see. Birkeland currents are an interesting thing in that a few different people started talking about them right around the same kind of time. Walter Russell has some interesting diagrams, one of which I think, if I can find my phone, I can share with us right now. Otherwise, like I've been sharing. Likewise, anybody else, if you want to talk about a Birkeland current until I can send this image.
Yeah, I'll give my opinion. I think a Birkeland current, trying to explain it to a young child, is a focus of energy, and you have a central point, and then you have radiating counter rotations of that energy wrapping around it. So it's creating barriers or layering, if you will. So imagine when you throw, this is the simple analogy to me. If you drop a stone into water, you see that initial point of reflection in the center, and then that ripple radiates outward. If you can imagine those ripples that you're seeing, is that water, one is higher or closer to you above the surface, and the other ripple is lower below the surface. And that's where you get that rippling effect. And that's how I see electricity from a centralized point of view of looking, if I could look into what the charge is, if that helps. So that's how I see Birkeland currents. You've got a focus of energy in the center, and as it radiates out, you've got a weaker focus of energy on the outside, but it's counter-rotating around each other. So you're going to have a neutral point in between, but again, it's so dynamic, it moves. So you can't just say, here's what it is, and here's the scaling of it, even though it is a scalable thing. Electricity is so dynamic. It's difficult to explain, but it's easy enough to say that it counter rotates around each other as the layer of density moves outward. There's my version. Hope that helps.
Perfect. Great explanation. So I can take it from there and further explain that there are ropes of current that go and build planets from the sun that are connected from one planet to the next to the next. We are getting currents of energy with dust storms and particles from every planet. And as we pass by them, we go through these strands of like spaghetti, but they're always attached to us because the central charge comes from the sun. And then after the central charge comes from I'm trying to find one of the sun here. Here's the sun. and this is Alfvén's galactic solar circuit model, like a homopolar motor. And this is what we were discussing earlier. And plasmoid currents work in the same way, or plasmoid creation in the lab. So a Birkeland current is a minimal surface, minimal energy configuration, meaning as the energy comes off of the sun, it forms these pairs of helical wind. Necessarily, they wind into paired filaments because the way that energy works, it minimizes itself into the energy path of least resistance. So these paths of least resistance, come off of the sun in these helical nested networks, where I agree. I show off in the Dougherty Network that all life spurs and forms off of these filaments that come off of the sun, and then they hit the earth. They come on the top of the earth. These helical nested winding patterns hit, and we see them. These high energy particles, ionized particles, hit the ionosphere, and they give us the auroras. And that's the Norwegian physicist, or the Norwegian plasma physicist who discovered them. His name is Birkeland current. I mean, his name is Birkeland, Christian Birkeland, and they're named after him because he came up with the crazy idea that it's electric currents, and everybody was like, nah, no, it's not. And then he was so shamed that he killed himself, part of the reason why he killed himself. Academia shamed him, but now we're starting to realize in the plasma and electric universe paradigm that he was correct. And indeed, these helical winding structures, as my map shows here, are coming off of the sun, as the sun is the central nucleus, and the energy comes out, and then they nest in these nested helical patterns. You can see they're nested here. And a double torus type of energy flow
Can I just add
produces
something?
collimated, biconical collimated outflows of energy. Yes, Heather.
It's just also important to note that Birkeland currents are always field-aligned currents. So if you can identify the Birkeland current, you can identify where the field lines are.
And the axially aligned, field-aligned currents, a lot of the time they're force-free currents, force-free field-aligned currents. And field-aligned means a straight line, a line, a chord. The field is aligned and bound and wound around each other. Eventually, these helical knots, or donuts, or toroids, turn into creatures, and the creatures make noise, and the noise creates resonance, which produces more life, which produces more. You have the resonance, the Schumann resonance, the Schumann cavity that life resonates with, and that there is on the earth. And it's where all life literally vibrates, at the Schumann cavity or Schumann resonance. Those two might be separate things, but the Schumann resonance, which is a particular frequency. And when
it's actually being held back too right now. As you talk about the Schumann.
One second. Sorry, let me finish that thought. As these currents come off of the sun or the source star, they eventually build up planets. They wrap around and build planets from the top up, just like their formation is. They use the exact same fractal version, a miniature version, to build a planet. And eventually, the ones that are have gone around long enough and have become cyclically wound to the Schumann resonance, life appears because the ingredients are already in every source star. But once the helical winding comes to a threshold, the resonance is built up. So that's why I'm inside of my book that I'm releasing this year, I'm stressing it's the universe game is the name of it. But I'm stressing fractals, frequencies, and filaments because that's what it really comes down to. And then these nested filaments, there's all sorts of different stuff, but we're realizing that the blood pulsates this way. Thoughts probably pulsate this way. Most likely consciousness is on a grid that's similar to this. And
absolutely it is. That the unseen shows you the scene.
So it's like the Grateful Dead song.
Everything is love?
No, Ripple.
I don't know.
What
is it? Which one?
Ripple.
What's the name of the song?
Ripple.
Ripple is an excellent song.
Okay, nice.
You'll be hearing a lot later.
Yeah, it is a ripple, man. It is a ripple.
Yeah.
And every human creates different ripples, and we're writing history right now. We're all writing history.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to something about from the last week's episode with the octagonal formations that the lightning adheres to.
That's right in here. That's the octagon. That's the hexagon. They're produced inside of these pinches. That's where the
I want to exemplify on that. That history is shown. See, this is where we talked at one point about the Schumann resonance. Schumann resonance is that it's got to come up. It's held at a certain pattern right now, and we need to get out of that hexagonal. Now, what blew my mind was looking through the petrified remains on our Earth, and some of them look like giants, some of them are just huge trees, some look like tree stumps. But I noticed at a certain point in time that they were octagonal and not hexagonal. Now, then I didn't have a chance to chime in last week on the lightning part, but I thought that was intriguing that nature itself still conforms. Lightning is still conforms to the octagonal, which changes into the dodecahedron, which comes out at I want to say, was it 1180? Anyway, the Hertz value of that is very important. But the octagonal used to be there at one time in the petrified remains of trees and different things that they've fossilized, found fossilized. They're octagonal, and then we switched to a hexagonal, and now we're caught in a hexagonal, patterning. And I thought that was interesting. And right now, my own research itself is moving. I want to figure out how to get us back to an octagonal, because that's more in line with the 111, 444, 222. The 11111. If you look at in any matter, it's a healing frequency. 111 is a healing frequency, and you can magnify it to 1000.
A base 16 number system might be useful.
Pardon?
Instead of a base 60 number system might be useful in attaining that.
It is. I was just researching that. Thank you. I was just researching base 60, and it absolutely complies with what I'm saying. And like I said, there's a time at which, and there's a time where we didn't have a moon either. There's all cultures talk about the time before the moon. And I stumbled on it through some of David Icke's work. He's got some really good stuff. He goes off the wall in his direction. That's fine. But everybody's got their own bias and their own, predetermined where they come from. But I looked at his work. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. So we used to have 360-day years. There's no 364-degree circle. It's always 360-degree circle. So why do we have 365 days? I mean, we could talk about the oscillations of the Earth and the wobble, but then again, there was a time before the moon. And looking at this, I look back again on the fossilized records and the petrified, the records, the petroglyphs, what do you want to call them, being that they were once octagonal in their resonant value. And some of the oldest, what do you call that, amber, that resin where they found like old flies and mosquitoes in. It's,
amber.
Yeah, I thought I called it right. It sounded too simple after I said it, and I'm like, wow, I remembered it. But anyway, yeah. Now that stuff has they found that they have an octagonal. Imagine what if bees went back to making an octagonal honeycomb? You know what I'm getting at? Right now we're caught in hexagonal, which makes a cube, and that's where you're literally looking at the circuit. And I sent that video to you, buddy. The circle and the square have two different frequency exchanges. When you meet them together, they make a hexagonal and causes a holding pattern, and that's F sharp. And that's what we're in right now, and that's a Schumann resonance in a nutshell. So, you know, we're being held into these things. So why couldn't we not be not held into these things, and you know what I mean, and get out of them? You know what I'm saying?
Can you explain the Schumann resonance briefly?
It's actually the harmonic frequency of pretty much all living life. The Earth itself is ringing out with it. Giza, the Giza pyramid itself is at an F sharp. The Grand Hall, the King's Chamber, the Grand Hall, and the bottomless pit that's found in the sepulchre between the Sphinx and Giza all ring out at F sharp, and that's off.
F sharp. F.
Yes, an F sharp, and that's a Schumann resonance of 7.8283838383. It's oscillating like that all the time because it's caught in an inversion. You can't hold in an inversion. Inversion goes. That's why B. Every note you can go from a D to a B to an A sharp. You know what I mean? B is the changing point. But you know what I mean? Go ahead.
The Schumann resonance resonating produces
life
cavities. And if you look up what literally vessels, living life is created in different size vessels and can only be in different size vessels due to Schumann resonance.
Yeah, they've actually got
scaling. It's held back by a scale. Yeah, it's a scaling network.
There's I can't think of his name, but there's an actual
Jeffrey West.
That says that you can't have life without life. And when he introduced the Schumann resonance into creating life, that was the only way he could actually sustain it, was having the vibration of the Schumann resonance. And it changed all his research. And that was back in the early 1900s, and everybody went crazy from there. But right. My research is showing it has to be brought up to match where we're supposed to be at harmonically in awareness. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Heather.
Well, I just have a couple of things to say about this. Firstly, that I've been doing a lot of research lately on resonance and the effect on human health, on cognition, on like Alzheimer's, our ability to perceive what each of the brain frequencies, you know, alpha, theta, beta, whatever, gamma, what those specific frequencies do to us, and you know, so they say, because there was someone that I knew, I'm going to leave this anonymous as I can, but there was someone that I knew that was very interested in the Schumann resonance because that particular frequency is actually a frequency in our brain that makes us more susceptible to implanted thought. We are more agreeable. We take in information. It's more like
absolutely, you're more pliable at that point.
I don't know necessarily, especially after speaking to this individual and the great lengths that this person was going to find out what, because the Schumann resonances were discovered during a very controversial time in medicine, and when people were using this type of knowledge to do not so ethical experiments on humans to find out what the repercussions of these types of things were on us. And at that point, it was found that this particular resonance was really good for placating masses, for subduing large groups of people. And so that's not necessarily what we should be grounding ourselves to. That's not necessarily the frequency that's the most beneficial to us as humans or as to humanity as a whole.
It's contrary to good health. You're absolutely
right. It is very,
right.
very not good for us to be doing this. And also one more thing that I also want to say.
It's a built-in limiter.
Yes,
I believe there's intent behind what you're describing, Heather.
I believe that there is intent behind what we're describing, because
that's what the scale shows right here. This built-in limiter. Unbounded growth requires accelerating cycles of innovation to avoid collapse.
Exactly. So, and also to just another point, um, that because we are piezoelectric crystal machines that are digesting and processing this information, it would also be detrimental to us to accept it at a elongated pulse, I guess. Pulsation is important because if it was a direct current for a long period of time, it would fry out the system, right? Our system.
Yes.
So this
perturbations are what they're looking
delivered
at.
to us,
And
yeah, in a pulsating form.
can I also say that it allows for the tendrils for tendril genesis? Like, I'm inventing this because that's a word, that a reaching tendril is always surrounded by layers of other tendrils. So you have, and in order for new tendrils to form, there has to be that circuit and that current, those leader currents. I just had to throw that in there. If you can wrap your mind around envisioning that, basically how lightning collimates, and it's collimated inside of itself.
Well, you bring that back to lightning again. There's absolutely, the Schumann resonance is set at 7.83 because they need exactly so many firings of lightning between the ionosphere and Earth to culminate the frequency that they need, as Heather was talking about. The 7.82 is absolutely detrimental to our health. We need to turn everything back on, and it's in a disharmonic state, and that's the one that harmonizes with the disharmonics of the 440 A equals 440 scale, which nobody wanted nothing to do with. 1910, the American Music Guild shunned it up until they bought the London Harmonic, the symphony in 38. Did anybody even go on the 440 standard, because nobody can tune to it. Every single orchestra to this day is still tuned at 444 through their piano. Now, why? Because it's an exalted frequency that doesn't break down over multi-inversions. So as you have a 10-piece, a 20-piece, a 30-piece, or an 80-piece orchestra, doesn't matter. I mean, you could jump in with the harmonic in the middle of it all, and as long as you're playing right, you know what I mean, you're sounding good. And that's why they went to the 440, because out of the 12 different scale inversions, you actually, out of the notes and everything, was it 6 to 9 of them are open-ended decimals, and anybody who knows math, an open-ended decimal cannot close, it cannot harmonize. So it's 6 6 6 6 6 6 6 6 6 6 6 6 6 6 6 6 6 6 6 6 goes on forever. If I did that for this show for another minute, you people would be like, shut the hell up, somebody mute that guy. Now, you know what I mean? So now imagine if that was going on, you didn't even know it. See, we're being bombarded with this, and this is what 5G and light wave form is. They're bombarding us with this. The 440, again, there's a military base on every single one of the power nodal energy zones in the world. Why have they done that? Because they had to subdue it at 440. As Heather pointed out, it's about subversiveness and submissiveness in that. They need to keep us controlled. It keeps the testosterone down too. The actual.
I'm sorry,
let me finish one thing here on this note.
I think that this might just be a symptom of the greater cause, right? The greater disease. I mean, I'm not sure exactly if the mass intent is to control the masses in such a way. It just might be like a benefit, okay? Because
I'm going to post Matthew Tobias notes. The Matthew Tobias notes through Rockefeller Institute, through their own archives. You can go right to the Rockefeller Institute.
But can I just finish my thought though? Because
I
feel like we're in a point right now, astronomically, where we are coming out of a cloudy place and we're going into a clear place. Let's just use really simple terms for this, right? We are going from one galactic stellar environment to another. All right. And because this happens like cyclically, it forces changes within our system that are undesirable for people who are invested in the system staying the way that it is. And I don't mean like our economics. I don't just mean our person systems. I mean like our ecological, our placement where we are right now in the big current string. Okay. So if you take your bubble and you surround it by other frequencies to insulate it from the exterior frequency, you may have a chance to suspend it, right? Like you're talking about in that hexagonal charge suspension where we're supposed
Yes,
to evolve.
the Hamsa sign, the Hamsa is actually the evidence of that. I don't know if anybody knows what the Hamsa is. It's got it looks like two thumbs, you know, with three fingers in the middle and the eyes in the middle of that. The Hamsa is actually a negation of the F sharp through a C. Now they're using the Hamsa is actually, you know, that was, and you find it a lot in Islam, and they're not supposed to wear any kind of idolatry. But the Hamsa is actually the what do you want to say, the pagan version of putting a holding pattern on the all-seeing eye of the F sharp. So, you know, I mean, it was just like you said, it's putting a circle inside of the circle of square. And that way you would be pured from it. And that is absolutely truth. And that's like what we're at.
Taking control of our own spaceship and driving ourselves where we want to go via frequency.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I would love to see each house have one. Like where, you know, where Heather could buy one and have it in her house.
I'm not necessarily convinced that's a good idea, nor am I convinced that it's the first time that humanity has tried this experiment and may be something partially responsible for some of the things that have happened in our history and the reasons why we don't know, the reasons why things have been blown up at that point in time, not by us, but
absolutely. There's a lot of evidence backing what you just said.
Take control over where we are and the earth and everything that's it's attached to is much stronger than anything that we could try to do. So I think
speaking of
bad.
Is what you're speaking of is ancient evidence all over the world for that, in the fact that they have tried to stop this ascension, as we just talked about, where we're moving into Sirius, you know, the quadrant of Sirius A and B, because we're actually Sirius C. We're the little guy in the other two. We're binary to B.
It's 5D versus 5G, you guys.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they're trying to gate that so people don't get there. They, you know what I mean? That's why their signaling is so strong.
Great.
Hello, guys. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hey, Sandra.
Excuse me if I digress a little bit. I have another question, and I'm sorry if this was addressed before in the conversation. But do you have can you think of any measurable or maybe optimally measurable predictions that you can extrapolate from this model? Can you predict anything happening, or is there any observation that we can make and measure to prove that this is actually what is going on? Because I'm not trying to be a party pooper. I'm actually very enthusiastic with this model. It looks really good, and it makes a lot more sense that dark matter, which never made a lot of sense to me. But is there anything tangible that we can observe that can prove?
Yeah, you can look at pole star shifts. Look at the pole star shifts throughout history. Now, I think the word that the last time I knew was Kuruku was the pole star before Polaris.
So you can see it when a star, for instance, changes polarity. That's what you mean?
No. Like right now, our pole star is Polaris. Okay, if you look to the north, the only star that isn't like moving in the circular motion of our planet spinning is Polaris. Now that's the alpha star of the beta quadrant of the Small Dipper, the Little Dipper, Ursa Minor. We're moving into Ursa Major. So we're actually moving into Sirius A and B, which are absolutely, as Heather said, the consciousness here is pure. Now, dark matter is a bunch of bullshit that the only thing dark in this world exists in hearts that are full of evil. I'm just saying it like it is. There's only light. There's pure light and visible light. Pure light at perpendicular triangulation makes visible light. And that's what we are. That's how we became matter. You have two different polarities, basically two different matters. One is the beginning of all things is consciousness, and it thought about what was nothing into everything. And now that's, you know, the Torus cell in a nutshell. They're making love all the way around us. So that being said,
I'd just like to say I've been waiting. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just say, so the pole stars show that we're moving from one quadrant to another. You want to look for tangible evidence. It shows. Now, my only guess is if we do a pole shift, we could actually have Sirius B or Sirius as our North Star if it flips. If it doesn't flip, it'll become our Southern Star, which is leading where the gives more evidence to my research and other people's research that the sun is being drawn in, and it's a binary 2 Sirius. Now, this points out biblically and throughout many different cultures that they talk about a time when there'll be no darkness. And I mean, think about it. If we're actually surrounded by our sun, Sirius A and Sirius B, and we're sucked into that triangulation, we'll never have night. And I mean, we'll be constantly fed with energy. I can't even imagine what that world's going to be like.
Jupiter and Saturn turn on, because Jupiter and Saturn have the potential to be stars in and of themselves. So if their like EM environment changes, then we actually are triangulated between 3 stars, and we wouldn't have nighttime.
And Saturn, believe it or not, is attached to Polaris. So as we move from Polaris, so as we move away from Polaris, Saturn loses its energy that it's getting from it. That's why Saturn now is losing its rings, right? And also Saturn feeds.
This is in the Journal of Nature. You know, they're showing Birkeland currents. This is becoming mainstream science, guys.
Dude,
that's what I was talking about. Yep.
20 years.
So get ready for the ride.
That's my favorite scene right there. I have a book called The Universe, and that the eye right there, the universal eye, that just explains it all. That's the Vesica Pisces, where literally everything started. The consciousness all began, where love began.
I think anybody can envision a beginning point wherever they'd like. That's a pretty one.
Yeah. That is my own bias. From an artistic point, and I'll even own that.
I know. I see other people say it too. And sacred geometry is so cute, but it's such an infant. And like what we're talking about is way more advanced than some of the beginnings of any of the sacred geometry when you look at all of it.
I'm not sure about that, buddy. I'm really not sure about that. And I don't think that
maybe some of the structures that were built, but nothing. We don't know now what we know now what we didn't know then as a collective, and this is important. This is something.
Look at the Farabara.
It might have been hidden before. It might have been hidden knowledge before, some here and there, but nobody had as many pieces of the puzzle right now because we are in the exponential of thought, the exponential of growth. We are in that arm that I showed earlier from Jeffrey West's picture, where we have to create, we have to be innovative in order to avoid collapse. That's where we're at.
I just like to say I've been waiting my whole damn life for the dawning of the age of Aquarius, and so I'm ready.
It's here.
I think, it's dawning. But I think, the truth of the matter is that in many other areas of culture and politics and all these other things, we're seeing sort of the last gasp of the old guard. I mean, I think that that's symbolic of what's happening in the cosmos as well, that we really are, change is inevitable. And I think we can control what the change looks like, but I don't think we can stop the change from happening. And I think that some of us, with or without 5G, have had the capacity to see this. And those of us who have that capacity, for whatever reason, maybe we have
Michael,
sort of our insight and our knowledge and our wisdom to the rest of the world. We are literally the only people who know what's going on, potentially.
It is our obligation.
It's a responsibility. We have to.
Thank you. Freely give and freely give, and everywhere you go, somebody wants to pimp it and sell it. This is where I got mad at, because everybody throughout history has stolen and sold sacred knowledge and tried to say it's their own. And that's what I loved about Tesla all along, was the fact he always said, look, anybody can go out there and get it. Just take the time. And if we're coming to a point where materialism, Jehovah is over. So the material thinking and the frequency of material, again, we're going to, as the gentleman just said, we're washing out of the 440 hold. They cannot hold the consciousness that's coming. They cannot. They cannot understand even to a feather. They know what's happening, and they're stalling and trying to put a choker on everything. That's
They're
why
even calling
5G
it.
6 months early.
Well, they're even calling it woke. That's dead. That's sedentary.
Yes.
Waking is the
Not
word.
happening.
Waking. We're never woke. We're
but
waking.
Woke is different
So
than
that's a
being
great
awake,
point.
right? It really is. But I think that there's also there's things happening, right? So I mean, if you wanna look at it from an ancient whatever standpoint, we could look at the astrology of it for just a second for what
I love
just
that.
happened
That has to fit in there.
right now. Okay, so we just are going through right at this present moment. It happened like maybe a week ago. Pluto conjunct Saturn in Capricorn. Okay, so Pluto conjunct Saturn every 34 years, and this is like a generational movement. It affects everyone generationally, and it hasn't happened in Capricorn, which Saturn is the ruling planet of Capricorn since the 1500s, since Henry VIII, when the Church of England and all of these radical reformations started to happen throughout the world at that very important time, because what Saturn represents is the patriarchy, right? The father figure is Kronos in his own house.
There was where the imbalance came. Thank you,
Right.
dear.
Well, but then he's conjunct with Pluto, right? The underworld. So it's like what needs to be taken down to be rebuilt in the masculine. And I'm not talking about like when we say feminine and masculine in this context, we aren't necessarily talking about men and women, right? We're talking about like
energy.
Out and the in, the outward and the inward. So for this whole period of time, it's been very masculine. It's been since the Henry VIII point time. It's been very outwardly projected. What's going on outside of us? What are these actions that we're taking? And right now, that needs to be taken down. And that's where the Me Too movement came in when Pluto was in Scorpio, and this looking at like how we're handling our feminine side, what we're taking in, and how we're nurturing that, what we've learned, what we've taken in, and how we can create a new type of patriarchal, a new type of masculine that is more intact, right? Because at the exact same time we had a lunar eclipse in Cancer, which is the mother, who also is ruled by Cancer's ruled by the moon, and its opposite would be the Capricorn. So there you've got the mother and the father sitting in the sky, balancing out the new home, taking what doesn't belong anymore and what we need to leave in the past and what we need to take with us to rebuild our familiar structure, our home structure, and how that's going to move us into the future. And everybody is happening to simultaneously right now in the world.
Brilliant. Bravo.
Amen.
May I say that was awesome. That was amazing. But I want to point out here, this video here, we can go back to the topic at hand, but this is the gold belt. The gold belt. We think of it as a ring. It's not a ring.
No.
It's a helix, because we're moving. We got to remember this shit.
Thank you. We have to quantify everything in motion.
Yeah, so we got to start rethinking. It's our cosmic orientation that allows us to have our morals and
Exactly. Bingo.
And this is why we've always been blessed by leaders of navigators, and why navigation is so important, and the cartographer and the map maker, and why that was so important, and the magnetic compass. And we got to remember now all of that shit's out the window, because this is the gold belt. What does that say about your orientation? You know, okay, now let's look up images.
Spiral, right?
Oh, it's a logarithmic. It's a logarithmic, living, pulsating, perturbating, helical, double helical. He gets into the double helix here, the double helix structure right here. It's a double helix. This is a gas. This is just gas filaments. Gas filaments like this along the galactic plane. Thoughts filament like this along the galactic plane. Matter solar systems,
Consciousness.
yeah, consciousness,
That's where
consciousness.
it all starts. So if I could just stress with one thing more than anything, is everything starts with conscious. You have the conscious wave, the
Yeah, and
conscious
that's
standing. Then you have the motion wave, and all of your
and that's the
wires,
beginning of
all electricity. Thank you. All electricity shows that it doesn't move. That's why they say, you know, all of the, you know, heat is the unmovable. Why? Because we move around it. We move in and out of it. That consciousness, and there's another beautiful version of it. And along the line, to say what Heather was, to top it off, we're moving out of alpha beta thinking. We're going to move away from the fact that there has to be an alpha male or a beta male, or two alpha males have to now fight if they're in a room. We're getting to the point where we're going to be in the conscious gate, the Aquarian gate, where it's all knowing. Nobody's got to be measuring nothing. Nobody's got to be, you know what I mean, competing about nothing. We're going to be integral, not competing by being.
You said something that sounded like oh, now the word, it sounded like you said conscious gate or conscious,
Yes.
but it was I don't know,
The standing wave of conscious.
it resonated. Maybe it resonated differently. Maybe it was a different word I was thinking of. Anyway,
Go with what you were thinking onto it, though. What does it inspire?
I that's what I thought. I forgot the word. That might have been the word, but it didn't resonate the way that I thought it resonated in my head. So it might not have been the word. You know what I mean?
We're moving through the conscious of us. Again, every possibility of us was created in the beginning of everything, right from the beginning. A complete creator cannot completely create anything other than completeness. So as we bump into the possibilities of what we could be, we're actually washing into another quadrant of consciousness, moving conscious. And when we are going to be at more brotherly love, we're going to be at, to uplift each other. That this competition thing is going to be over. The word of war, you know, there's actually going to be words we're just going to wash right out of our dialect, you know, that we just won't even use anymore. Like the Italian dialect doesn't even have the word E in it, you know, the sound E, it's yeah. You know, I mean, it has a totally different variance to it. You can't, you know, an Italian will jump you nuts about that.
So,
but there'll be sounds that we won't even use no more because they're not healthy to us.
if I might take the mic here for a minute and explain
I'm
something.
done.
See this galactic plane right here that shoots out Birkeland currents along it and builds the planets that we just passed through? That right there with the this is the planets. This is the solar system. Our colleague David Johnson built this in virtual reality, and this is Donald Scott sitting there viewing it for the first time. These are planets. Now, see, the center is the sun, and consciousness flows, in my understanding, right along that same line of the. Am I calling it correct, Heather? The galactic plane.
The galactic plane?
Right here, yeah.
Yeah, the galactic plane and the interstellar.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the local chimney, or the galactic plane, and it's a Birkeland current. Now, what I'm trying to show is that consciousness itself falls out in this grid along with these planets, and neutrinos are just there to bombard the substrate to make it look like it's actually happening. And because we're on this illusion, is the reality like a hologram? Is it? We know it's living. We don't want to say it's a simulation. I don't agree necessarily with simulation. I want to say it's a living, breathing, pulsating network, thriving, electric type of connected.
It is absolutely like neurons in a brain, buddy.
Right.
It's just like that.
That's evasive almost, and it almost suggests that it could be simulation in a way. But using this model, it creates a plane, a disk that's moving through space that has these planets on it that create this experience for the whole snake itself. But it's only happening at the disk time during the disk. So however fast that disk is moving through space collectively, which would probably be how fast the solar system moves.
If you could imagine that now, as you're talking about us moving through the solar system, moving through the galaxy moving through the universe, through all the other galaxies, spinning, and the gyrational toroidal effect of all things. We're only looking at us in the middle of as visible light. This is what I'm saying. We are the compression of pure light, and we are literally the compression of nothing against everything, and that is conscious against the movement, what wasn't there before. So before she was, there was nothing. But when she was everything. And I use that as Ness, as in the movement of conscious. Faith without works and work without faith, that whole speech. But we are talking, our universe is literally the center of it. Just like how they trap the bubble in the water.
Bolt. It's a compressed lightning bolt.
Yes, and at the compression, at point, that's what we are. That's how special we are. Our universe, everything, is that our refraction here in this universe is very small.
Yeah, it's a compressed, like just a dendrite.
Yes,
really.
we're a dot in that Birkeland current you're showing right there. We're like one of them dots in there, and it's focused on that point. But now you got to remember, now we quantify it, so it keeps moving through that. See what I mean? So it's ever changing, and that's why your involvement, just the fact that everybody on this call now, we're changing the world. Consciousness, it's the 100 monkey theory. I just wanted to be one of the 100 monkeys. I don't know if I'm the first, I'm the second. I don't know if I'm the 100. I don't even know if I'm the monkey on the other island that picked up on the other 100 monkeys on the other island. See what I'm getting at?
In the middle.
Yeah. See, thank you. I could be the 50th monkey. I could be 44 because that's what my gematria comes up, 444. My actual gematria number of my name all comes at the 444, and I think that's interesting that I was drawn to the exalted 444 current and didn't even know that. Like that was this after effect. But we are changing it just right now of getting together. And this consciousness is unfolded. They can't stop it. The one gentleman said that about we're literally washing out of one, and Heather amplified it as well. We're moving to one consciousness, and those are the celestial times. And we go, we're going out of Pisces into Aquarius now. Remember, it moves backwards because of the way the perception of time is and the perception of time is. So we're moving into Aquarius, which is the pouring out of knowledge. And we're like little children right now. Why? We're driving ourselves crazy. We're probably driving the creator crazy, but he's patient to it. So we're getting to the point where we're going to have energies that, like right now, I have liquid plasma energies that make machines out of that have no friction. You know what I mean? So we won't have to worry about parts. People won't make production for profit soon. We'll only produce for prosperity. That is happening before our lifetime is done, ladies and gentlemen. Before my eyes are shut, that's what we'll see in this world. The commercial world will have to be harnessed. We got to put a choker on it. That's going to be the beginning.
May I say something there? I think it's important to not get carried away because I come from Cuba and I've seen a lot happen in the name of goodness, and a lot of people being unrolled, and a lot of people being squashed in the name of helping others. So, yeah.
No, valid point. Valid point.
Look at how the electricity is cutting off the sand. It restricts the sand flow at times. It's so cool.
That's very interesting.
Anyway,
I want to add something. Maybe, during polar reversals of the sun, if we look at how the aurora catches the electricity of the sun,
just like this.
Maybe if we look at Jupiter, for instance, that has a huge electric field, and these currents are real, maybe we can see some indication or some movement in the Jupiter corona that could how can I say, demonstrate, or we can sort of see the shape of these something like a Buddhist drawing unfold when the solar reversal happens, or during a solar flare or something. It's just something.
You're looking for more evidence.
Yeah.
And support. Yeah, I agree. We've been talking about this for a long time, and there's a lot of people on that right now that are working on evidence, and daily news comes out supporting the electric universe paradigm. I don't even want to call it a theory.
Well, if we can make a, if you can make a prediction, can be a theory. That's the only
Absolutely.
thing
Absolutely. I think Sandro's correct, and we need to head in the direction of predictive analytics of the sets that we're dealing with, possibly the geometries, because that's what it is.
You have to see this
understanding
shape
the algorithm of life. Yeah,
it's got to be predictive, man. You gotta make predictions with your work, and your work's got to fill all sorts of all sorts of holes.
Mm.
And last episode, I don't know if you caught it, Sandro, but we went through the forensic geological evidence of Birkeland currents. So this is more evidence here of not only Birkeland currents, but just nucleosynthesis and all sorts of other stuff, you know, and it's plenty of different people's models, and it sits right here in the center of the Dougherty set harmonically with many different, not every one of their models is to a certain degree, but this allows for any size hole of a quasar or black hole or pinch, any size pinch. And shows the geodesics and the geometry, and I want to say biconical outflow again, because that's prominent in a lot of cosmic, what do they call it, guys? Back me up.
Well, besides that, I think it's very interesting that drawings justify somehow the formation of Saturn rings. Yes. And the gravitational places around the Earth where things tend to gravitate.
Mm-hmm. The homopolar
Lagrange points.
The homopolar motor of Earth, again, it's a stellar. What is it? A stellar generator. As Bruce Laybourne points.
Those Lagrange point placements are important because they are where things are suspended in their orbital rotation, right? Like the placement of where it is suspended in the orbital rotation. That's why we're able to put satellites in certain spots and let them hang out there, and they will stay there. Those are called the Lagrange points, like L1, L2, L3, and it's extremely important in the placement of like orbitals
for geosynchronization and whatnot.
Exactly.
It could also justify the orbit of planets that are not, that don't have like a horizontal or regular orbit. If you see, everything seems to be in a plane from the sun, but some planets like Mercury, well, Mercury is justified by relativity, I believe. I believe not that it's justified by relativity. But I think, well, Pluto, it has a tilted orbit, I think, and maybe all
axis, how it spins.
Why is it that the orbits are not like one perpendicular, one horizontal, one 45 degrees? They're all on the same plane.
I think this
explains, a lot. But I think they're not all in the same plane, really. They are like tilts.
I think
those tilts have to do with this.
Definitely.
This plane right here. This is you could envision this as the galactic plane that I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
This is a planet rests in every single different spot or around here. Then you can find accordingly all of the magnetospheres, the magnetotails, everything is inside of this geometry. Literally, I've been showing Heather. Heather's been showing me, and we've been just.
I'm sorry, I did before I forget. Like not right now, but later. Can you put this diagram in the rooms, buddy? Can you make this like a 3-dimensional? Like, can you put the spiral in the rooms?
The spiral is already in the rooms.
Is
I
it
can highlight where it is. I can highlight
well?
it where it is inside the rooms.
Okay.
Because and that's kind of like the vortexture, and vortispheres, because all of these are vortispheres. They pinch.
Well, right, because it's making me think like he's talking about how they are the elliptical planes that the planets uh, orbit on are slightly off kilter. They're not exact. It's not exactly like just one plane, but if it's
Right.
on a spiral that's moving through, then that could possibly account for not only why they're at a slightly different angle,
Yep.
but also why the tilt of the planets themselves, especially Uranus, are also at a different angle.
I'd have to have a software large enough to do a small scale solar model using the Dougherty set or the Dougherty Network. And yes, this has been predicted and talked about ever since I met Heather and before.
Yeah, draw it in the rooms, dude.
And I can draw it in the rooms too and see why they spin at a certain point, why their axes are tilt, because
Yeah.
it will tell you
Yeah.
why. If you have the right model, which isn't hard. I've been trying to find it, because I have to start small, so I need a smallest scale model as possible. But I started with a basketball as son, but then that's retardedly, sorry, excuse my language, French, that's ridiculously small. It leaves it leaves it so small that you wouldn't be able to see it on the model scale here. Then I did a basketball. So I need to do like a room size of this and then go out from there. And then you can see, like down the block, print this out, because it's logarithmically scales out that long. Down the block, you could figure out exactly what size different ones are and see, due to the invariances and the correct word would be interference patterns, the destructive and constructive interference waves that are produced. You would have the reason why the planets are where they nest inside of the structure, just like everything else.
And not just that, this could have something to do with earthquake prediction too, because it
and our health.
Yes, there's something to do with the earthquakes and their placement. It's something to do with like a rocking that keeps everything. It's kind of like that oscillation, right? That keeps us where we're supposed to be. So it's that physical movement that's kind of keeping us in line, and that's why Mars quakes are important too, and Venus quakes, and we're learning that there's these other quakes on each planet, and I think that those are just the physical oscillations that keep it kind of like the oars. The oars are like, the rudder. It's just kind of like keeping us in place, and I feel like so it's reactive to its local environment, whatever contributing factors might be there. Like solar wind, like I said, astronomical placement, where we are, other objects.
Really, but can you program or find somebody to program it into a computer so you don't have to do like a huge map? So you just can zoom in and out in the
That's
in
what
the
I was
program?
hoping. Yeah, that's what I was hoping. It brightens on the show.
Do you know this girl you had on the Electric View, the fractal lady? What's her name?
Lori.
Lori, yeah, maybe she could help. I don't know. She makes programs.
I
don't know how willing she would be, but I wanted to say I don't know how real or how down to earth would be this theory, but it looks a hell of a lot like what I see when I'm having ayahuasca.
Oh, that's so many people tell me that, and just knowing that I'm on the right direction, you know what I mean? Like with my intuition, and because my spires are out there on the fringes where nobody's touched that I've seen yet. So like with my intuition and other people backing me up with all of their visions that they've had on different substances, entheogens, ingesting theo, God. It's backed up a lot of the evidence of what this is. So,
and in any case, they're beautiful too.
So, buddy,
the planet would be like here. Go ahead. Yes, Michael.
Well, I learned so much by listening. I hate to talk, but what you're really, this is the blueprint of the universe. This is the underlayment, the structure, of the universe that you're creating. Yep. Is it not?
Yep. Yes. Charge and how charge layers.
And so everything is built on these linear frameworks that you're creating. I don't mean they're linear in the sense that they're lines, but these line drawings are literally blueprints for the structure of the universe.
Spherical stacking.
I just want to say that out loud because it's like I know that, but I need to hear you say, yeah, that's right.
Well, all the evidence is pointing in that direction, and then I created 5 more. Based off of how much this is already delivered, the information that this one alone has delivered, I'm interested to see how much more information comes out of the other ones as well. Because from here on out, it's going to be big data, and then once these numbers are crunched, we're going to see the stock market, we're going to see everything. We're going to go into our fossilized neural networks. And that's why I've been saying the I3, the Internet 3, and this is probably exactly what NeuralNet wants to do, because I listened to their mission statement, and which is owned by Elon Musk, and he's the farthest in advancing it. And I'm sorry to bring it to this direction, but artificial intelligence and other things like that are also on the backgammon. And I've been saying this for a long time from a tall mountain point, that the Dougherty Network is the path of least resistance to artificial intelligence. And that scares me, but that's not that scary.
Well,
it's not supposed to be scary.
It makes sense intuitively.
Yeah.
But it is scary.
What happens when AI sees the fractal of itself, or AI sees this, and then it starts to know things because of this? That's what's going to happen, and that's how we're going to merge. We're going to corkscrew in.
I have an issue with the whole artificial intelligence thing, and I think there's something. It's something that I probably mentioned when I was on the show. I don't believe in artificial intelligence. Maybe I'm wrong.
It's already happening, bro.
But my point is, you can have computation, but to have intelligence, you need life. Life and intelligence are not distinguishable. They're the same thing. They may be able to create something like artificial life, but artificial intelligence is just not. It's just some form of computation. They may have been able to create some form of life, but not intelligence detached from
I don't
life.
see it.
Because
I don't see it being too far fetched.
I have thought this through quite a bit. The thing is, we're born, and again, I think I mentioned this the other time. We're born to the world. We perceive things. Then on top of that, we create feelings like sensations. Then we create emotions, and on top of those emotions, we create the intellectual part. But the intellectual part, the alleged intelligent part, it's just the icing on the cake. It's responding to a deeper hierarchy that has to do with emotion and with sensations. They are not detached, if you know what I mean. They can create something that can act like it's alive, like it's intelligent, but in order
just
for
like
it to
an
be
idea,
intelligent, it has to be
well, check this out.
Alive.
An idea is alive. You can't touch it, you can't smell it, but it's alive. And we see this every day with memes. ideas can become fabricated out of nowhere, and that's what rules the world is ideas. That's what rules, conquers and conquers and rules kingdoms for eons. And it's set habits of behavior, and they all seem to be helical. There's fluctuations up and down, there's fluctuations, but one thing that's for sure is it's always seems to be exponential.
Yeah.
So it always seems that we're in the last of the days. It always seems to everybody that it's going to end now.
Right.
And that's why they're talking about, in order for artificial intelligence to be created to work, you have to install the fear of death in it.
It's just going to be, if anything, it's just going to be another form of life, in my opinion. But life
that's what I think. The word artificial is the problem.
Wait, let me finish the idea.
Go ahead.
We are, from my perspective, we are expressions of life, forms of life is everything. Everything is alive, and we are like a small pocket of that life. That's the way I see it. That's the way I perceive it from the experience I have had. So that's how everything is interconnected. So to try to create something that is not into that harmony, it just doesn't work.
If you make it helical, it will.
But then you will be creating life, not
yeah.
You know what I mean? Not artificial intelligence.
Exactly.
It's okay, artificial life, artificial intelligence,
maybe,
AR, artificial reality. We can make all this, dude. It's crazy. And just that the universe allows us to go in and tamper that deep, and it doesn't have a reset button when you go that deep, probing into it, says a lot about Mother Nature. Like, it should have a reset button, like, oh, they know, they saw it, they're starting to do it.
Well, we die, and we dream every day.
There's your reset button.
There is a reset button. Everything has boundaries.
I think there's a problem with the language, and I think that our language hasn't caught up to the conversation that we're having. And this is what's fascinating about talking to people who have electric universe paradigm in their experience. The truth of it is that if what Buddy is saying is right, the intelligence that we create would not be artificial. It's based on the same
it'd be real
structure and foundation that we ourselves are created on. So
we'd use these.
Now explain to me how a human being, a natural life form, can somehow create this artificial life form. It's a thinking error. There's at some point we will create life, and it will be natural, not artificial at all. So the artificial component is deceiving. It's deceiving.
Yeah.
It's not artificial.
Yeah, you don't have to put the artificial on it at all. It's actually real, and it's part of it. And it's just gonna be an extension of our body, and like the internet is already extension of our mind. It's a tool. It's a mind field out there, and everything is thought. You put your thought in your web page, and we know it now, and we share it, and we participate. And if you don't want to be on the show talking about your idea, guess what? I'm going to talk about your idea without you on the show, because it's out there. You've shared it on the internet.
It's not yours. We all share it.
Yeah. You've already shared it. Sorry, bro. You're going to tell me I can't talk about this?
Proprietary concepts. Right. Amen.
Yeah.
Once it's out there, it's out. Like, so that's what it's like our responsibility, right? Like, if you have an idea and you're not ready for that idea to take life, keep it to yourself, because as soon as it's out there, it is for everyone. And I also believe that we don't get ideas just for ourselves, because why would the universe do that? That's for everyone. So share that shit.
Mm-hmm. Just like this picture.
Well, how do we get an idea? It's that resonance that we talk about. You know, that's not
Schumann resonance.
That's
maybe it's in the Schumann cavity.
With an existing vibration.
That's what I was
Right.
talking about earlier.
Well,
It's along that field. It's along the galactic plane only momentarily as it moves, and then it's gone. It's void in the front and void behind it. There's
Well, okay,
nothing.
so a lot of ancient cultures who are still practicing today do believe in passing their stories on in their indigenous language because of the resonance factor involved. They want to
And sound.
yes, they want to transmit orally the resonance
Fascinating.
vibration attached to the story so that passes along with it. When we use a language like English that's a bastardization of several different languages, our current language isn't something that is naturally within us. It's something that was created by moving different things into position and creating the way we speak now, which makes you wonder how much resonance is it lacking and what are we passing on by using this particular frequency, like these sounds that we're making. Is it good for us?
There's so many questions, and I like returning my mind to the thought of, if all these vibrations are so bad like they say that they are, then how come athletics are so healthy and athletes are so healthy and they're always in the ring surrounded by thousands of people with phones?
It's a temporary situation though, isn't it?
What about other people that are always in situations like that? Like in the mall, people that work in the mall.
Well, but we have increasing depression. We have increasing anxiety. I mean, people are very, very anxious, right? These athletes.
Can't that be? Hang on one second. Can't that all be blamed on pharmacia?
Well, not necessarily, because not everybody is taking drugs.
Oh, are you kidding me? Have you seen the charts?
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is, in this culture,
most of us are in America. Other people aren't. Not everybody in the world. Depression hasn't gone up. It's in America.
Everybody lives underneath the power line. In America, everybody.
Maybe the doctors are more willing to facilitate you some Valium.
Yeah, you don't need to feel that way. How about you just have some of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty convenient.
Everybody, dude.
It's a greater problem than just. I mean, it's a greater problem than just that, and it's about the longevity of it. And yes, people who live in cultures that are more interwoven into their natural environments and less exposed to these types of EMF waves do live longer, happier lives. They know their purpose. There's a lot wrong right now. We can't just pinpoint it and say, oh, this is the one factor that's made the whole world all fucked up. Or maybe
a lot of it's toxic.
There's a lot.
Toxic thought and toxic, basically, what I mean by toxic thought is bad news, a lot of bad news, and that's toxic thought, but it's acidic and we're attracted to it and we want to see it. Our morbid curiosity keeps us going to the theaters or doing whatever. It's like, and then the conductors at the top controlling the morbid thoughts, compounding with the music culture. It's people say it's bad. It's not bad.
Well,
it's
like a
really good right now.
Selves, right?
It's thought.
It's they're our primal selves.
Yeah, they're holding our thoughts back. They're saying we can't think this way.
Let's say all of these manipulation, all these evil things are happening, which happens in every culture, because every time there's been, elites, and if you were part of elite, you may be indoctrinating people down. The thing is, I think there's a lack of meaning in people, and there's a lack of taking responsibility. So, okay, all this is going on. What are you going to do about it? What is the meaning of your life? Where are you going? So, yes, maybe they are controlling you and so on. But what is your life plan? What things you care about? If you have something you care about, if there's something for you that makes sense in your life. If you are doing something that is worth doing, I don't think any of it it's important or it's too relevant. But there's a lot of people who I don't think have a lot of direction. Because in part of this fear of, oh, they're controlling me, all the, so what? What are you going to do with your life? I mean, but in an objective way.
Yep.
Yeah. And a lot of it is speaking to thousands of people or millions of people a day. Podcasting and networking is just gigantic. People talk so much trash about the internet and being on your phone and all this other stuff. The network is open. Don't be afraid to use it. Use it professionally. Use it ingenuitively, and climb up the ladder, man. Everybody, the information is there for everyone in the universe to conquer and show the universe what we are as humans.
Well, and not just that, but to say they have control over us is like an admittance of giving your control of yourself over to someone else. To say like these things are controlling our thoughts. Well, like then you're admitting that you're being controlled. Well, kind of. You're admitting that you're being controlled. So now that you can admit that and look at that and see that, now you can take an action to do something about it. You don't have to just sit there in it and be like, oh shit, no, this is where we are. Like, no, you're just like wasting that realization to have it and then not act on it, to not evolve.
You have to have a really, really strong willpower, which is in your mind. Where is that? Nobody talks about willpower nowadays, or courage.
Or that responsibility that Sandra was just talking about, that self-responsibility, exactly, that courage.
Yeah.
And maybe not just doing something about it, but doing something about you, with your life and solving your life and putting things in perspective with your whatever you want to do. It doesn't have to be saving the world, or it's can be someone you have to take care of.
This reminds me of a
project or something.
This reminds me of a story. A buddy of mine was complaining the other day about how Facebook is just filled with toxic garbage and he doesn't want to be a part of it anymore. And I was really surprised. It's not that he was wrong. The idea is, from his perspective, Facebook was a place he went to get things. So he's a consumer. And it was a surprising admission on his part, because I disagreed with him about the toxic nature of Facebook, but the idea that I don't use personally Facebook to consume, I use it to perpetuate. So I am so by nature, what occurred to me was that I don't complain about how shitty Facebook is, because for me, Facebook is a way for me to tell people things. I don't consume. I'm a producer by nature, and I'm not a consumer by nature. And I think that those things are intrinsic. They're cultural ways that we look at these sort of paradigms. But the fact of the matter is that you and I and the rest of us here are producers. We are creating ideas. We're not necessarily just consumers. And I think that it's important to make that distinction. Things are shitty if all you do is sit back and consume. Well, then you just have to take what we feed you, right? But if you're
but Facebook.
I just want to say something about
Facebook. Okay.
Real quick though, just for the context, can we change the words from giver and taker to receiver and transmitter?
Ooh, I like that.
I think that's brilliant, and it goes back to what you were saying initially with the feminine and positive.
And we can take that concept, and I'm gonna press play here, and you can just see efficient energy distribution. I want to say efficient energy distribution. See how efficient energy is being distributed. And by the nature of the distribution of efficient energy is you have that counter rotation. That's part of a lightning bolt, and that's part of a Birkeland current. And that's a paragon, a perfect example of a Birkeland current is that counter rotation. And that occurs just because of the dissipation of hot and cold currents. That's it. All things are just the motion of hot and cold. And by the motion of hot and cold efficiently distributing, all electrical charge and discharge is induced, and plasmoids and beings are created.
I like you guys.
We love you too.
Yeah, we like you too, man.
Life has
I
to
love your
flow.
video this week. Oh my gosh, it blew my mind.
Virtual group hug.
Dude, you guys got to watch David's new video this week. It's a continuation of Wayne Burns' info.
Yeah, it's
in
really good.
didactics.
And you guys were talking about Polaris and Sirius Star earlier, and it kind of connected some
Before
thoughts
we
that I've
get
had in the
serious,
past.
before we get serious, I want to say something about Facebook before we get serious. If you trash your friends if you're uncomfortable for what your friends are posting in Facebook, that says a lot more about you than anything else, because they are your
Right.
friends.
Yeah.
And if you don't like your friends, man, you have to think a lot about a lot of why you befriend them to begin with. So everything is a mirror. But sorry, I also wanted to
Well
get
said.
into the serious
Yeah,
thing.
it's. Are you a conductor of electricity, or are you a dump? That's the idea, that there are people who are passing on and communicating and disseminating information, and there are people who are just drawing energy. And I think those people are. It's an interesting comment you make. I have like 5,000 friends on Facebook, and I can't account for the character of all of them. But I don't use Facebook to consume. I use Facebook to perpetuate information. And I think that is electrical, to the extent that I see myself as a conduit or a vehicle through which information travels, as opposed to a receptacle of information.
Well, you got to have a ground. You got to ground out the circuit somewhere. There's all your receivers.
So David, take us into a little bit of maybe some closing remarks, some touch us on some of your article a little bit, and it's about 4 hours in, guys, or 3 hours. Let's see.
I'm sorry, you were going to say something about serious. I don't want to, and I interrupted. I don't want you to.
Sure. Well, Buddy brought up the last video that I posted, which again, it's all by a gentleman named Wayne Byrne, which is a mysterious guy I wish I could get a hold of. But in his theory, he put together the Saturn hypothesis of basically using Donald Scott's Birkeland current model and a realistic circuit diagram of how a Sol system and a Saturn system could have merged, and how electrically all of those planets would interact, affecting the rotation of each of the planets and the moons, even the asteroid belt. And a really good picture to me, in my mind, probably the best picture I've heard so far, of pairing Dave Talbot's polar configuration with how that could have happened, of merging the Saturn system with our current sun system as we know it. And in my studies, and which again, it has a lot of religious background into it, but pairing that with mythological stories and other world cultures and belief systems, this to me is the most aggregated, believable, plausible, situational type of merger between those two systems. And I'll just say, from my own background, there's been things I've seen for years saying that, pointing to Polaris being the origination of where that Saturn configuration came from, and then getting into tribes like the Dogon tribe, where they use the squatter man in their ritual dances, and they talk about how there used to be a single star system that split, and they have this astronomical knowledge about Sirius Star and knew there was Sirius A, B, and C before modern astronomy even knew, before we even found this tribe. And that is one of those unknowns, again, like we see in accepted academia of, well, there's no way they could have known this, and how did they draw something so accurate? And again, I have just been on this quest of pairing together all of this religious beliefs with scientific beliefs and trying to make sense of it all. And when I found this gentleman, Wayne Byrne, again, this stuff blew my mind. And this video, I was so encouraged to go back and transcribe it and re-narrate it, because to me it's kind of hard to listen to the original presentation. So I decided to do that because I think it's very valuable, and it may not be completely accurate, but I think it's a fascinating, plausible idea. So, you guys were showing, Buddy, you were showing how the currents move from the center to the outside, and I mean it's painting pictures in my mind anyway.
Yeah.
So,
So
I think to each his own.
I'm gonna take the mic here, and I'm gonna ask one question. I'm gonna ask, what does that remind you of, Heather?
I was already thinking that it reminds me of your new sets a lot.
Yeah.
Like before, like the minute you put it up, I was like, oh shit, there they are.
That's the Dougherty Network right there, dude.
Yeah.
What
So
Julia
this is what
said?
this is what we were talking about, the geometry that I do, called Love is Watching, and the Dougherty set, the Dougherty Network.
What do you say? Sorry, reminds you of what Julia said?
The Dougherty, Dough.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
the geometry I do. So this is exactly it. These are the pillars. These are the rooms that Heather was talking about. This is it, man. This is how it works. And we were talking about this before we even showed this earlier on this episode, about doing exactly just this with the stacking arrangement.
About the rooms. What are the
Network.
rooms, buddy? I guess I didn't understand that. Can you tell me about the rooms?
Yeah, I'll go to the rooms and you'll see the connection here. Perfect timing. Probably get some rooms this way. These are the rooms. Because it's three-dimensional. It's the vortexture.
You like walk around.
So those are individual bubbles.
It's literally the Dougherty Network, the same geometry, but I'm only highlighting one of the chiralities, because there's always two. There's always two going in and two coming out, of all of them, because there's a counter rotation going in and a counter rotation coming out. So there's two coming in and two coming out.
You could basically like walk through there. Like if you want to build something in three-dimensional space, you can do it in this too.
Yeah, you can really see the dimensionality of it. And then you go back to where we just were.
Like point out the vortices. Yeah, there, see? These would be the vortices. Oh, I'm pointing with I keep doing that, pointing with my cursor.
But you can see the similarity. That's one, but there's probably more. Let's see if anything. Comes up with this.
So then what could I say, that the room is the single unit of the Dougherty set?
The room is multiple layers of all of it happening at the same time. Yeah, it's the dielectric inertial plane that is the galactic plane that I was talking about, that happens and then it's gone.
You can
and it's all at once.
Right. It's not just
it's all at the same time.
Yeah, it's like the way I like to think of it, but the way it looks to me, like the set is kind of like the surface wave, or what you would see in a two-dimensional diagram of what's going on. But the room is a three-dimensional, like you can actually climb in it and walk through those vortices. And they're creating like when I think of, do you guys ever see that movie Legend, that Ridley Scott movie Legend, and the fairy tales? I don't know, they're like these huge collimated structures that they're like running through and walking through in this big space, and that's what it's kind of like feels like in there.
All right.
This is a good image of it.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm getting an inkling of what you're talking. I think I get it. So the room is referring to the actual volumic space of the individual.
Well,
okay.
It's actually referring to scripture about Jesus going to a place and building rooms of mansions filled with an eternal palace, but it's limited as to the amount of people who can come through the pearly gates, the spherical pearly gates. There's 12.
Yeah, see them all?
To the north.
See them? You can see them now, can't you?
Oh my God, you're blowing my mind.
Yeah, so it's the New Jerusalem. That's what the room is. It's what the new heaven is. The new heaven on earth, heaven here with us. We are the New Jerusalem as we are the bride of Christ. And because we have this information, we have this knowledge, we have this forgiveness, we have this grace. Now we have with us, which we've had the entire time, the triune Trinity, the tight rope, the rope and the vine, the cord that's been talked about throughout all of Scripture. We've known life. Life is the most important. It's been called, it's the way, the truth, the life. And there's a way to it. There's a truth about it. And when you get there, it's life.
The way to the truth is through the light.
So when you die, I still don't know if you should go through the light or go into the light or not. I don't know.
Well, I'm just relieved to know that Tommy Wiseau isn't there. That's all I need to know.
Oh,
that's amazing. No one has ever put those concepts together in my head like that. I mean,
I'll share this with the group if you want to read this.
It's becoming kind of a habit to get my mind blown on the weekends. Every Saturday, I get my mind blown once again. But
thank you, Michael.
The latest. Yeah, it's amazing. You're amazing.
This is this. I'll share this article with everybody. It's a write-up that my buddy did on Ether Force here, and I'm going to definitely have him on the show and talk with him. But I didn't really know. I still haven't talked with him personally. He did this as a tribute to me, but it's a lot of my writing mixed with mostly my writing. I think there's a little bit of his in here, but it's mostly quotes. But the beginning is his intro, I believe, and then some videos of where to find the content. So, yeah. I appreciate everybody. Yeah. I was excited to see that he put it up there, and it reads really well. And you can go through and be like, oh, okay. Oh. And yeah, that's it. So anyway.
Yeah, dude, you really worked hard for all this shit. I'm really proud of you. You just keep kicking ass, bro. This is awesome.
There's a reason to all this. I have no idea. You know what I mean? I'm a current. I'm just a current in the stream.
Handle it, man. Keep going.
Yeah. So the channel's very solid, and it's not gonna. I mean, it's the core. The core is here. We're part of the core, and we're getting this information out on the electric view and here, and the electric universe paradigm's going to prove all the Dougherty Network. They don't know that they have to go through it yet to see that it's there, but you can't avoid it. You can call it something else if you want, but there's 5 of them now, so I call them the Dougherty sets, and whatever, they are what they are. I put them out there, and we're going to go into them this year, and that's very exciting to me. And we're going to start feeling each other and seeing stuff that we don't want to know about everyone. And then we're going to realize after a lot of weeping that we're all really fucked up and the Bible's true. And there will be no more tears after that, because we will know that love is watching and there's no way you can get out of it. And that's why there's so many people afraid and suicidal. Possibly because they know that the cords are going to be retracted and recorded and held on to in any manner which way forward, and This is biblical stuff. I
Well,
mean, I'm
that's
not
why
trying to
it's,
scare
that's why it's
anybody.
important for people, for all of us. I mean, because biblical or whatever faith anyone believes in, right? It is
Yeah.
just like Santo said. It is our responsibility to grow within our, to take responsibility for ourselves, and it is our responsibility to take action for how we choose to grow and evolve. And that could be it, like you said, in the New Jerusalem, or what others might be calling 5D. However that ascension comes to you, it's just it is like it's our responsibility to take responsibility for ourselves, and not just look at the dirty things that are in other people, but to look at them within ourselves. And then we'll realize that
That's
everyone
right.
is human. Everyone has those dirty features, and everyone also has their light. And that's what the shadow work is about. You know, the Jungian
Yeah.
looking and integration of
It's
that
also
shadow.
a
That's the
feminine
whole.
paradigm, the internal search rather than the external search.
Exactly. So there's going to be a lot of shadow work, and that's where that Pluto comes in, and that's what you're talking about, buddy. But we have to know that that's part of our humanity too. That's part of the balance, right? Like if you think God made us, He made us this way. He gave each of us these shortcomings, these faults, along with our strengths, to help us evolve into
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
better
And this is how it's going to get done. We're going to be able to see the panopticon is going to extend beyond what the government wanted it to ultimately. And there's going to be a lot of convictions, a lot of suicides, a lot of really crazy shit. And I think we're going to be able to see into an eternity.
well, we can see, and that's part of it
We
too.
already can. That's the
We
thing.
can,
And we
and we
have
don't
been
realize
able to.
that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. We're afraid of it.
You have to like be willing to sit with that darkness and sit with these feelings and sit with
Yep.
them, to know what is yours and what is the exterior, because we are
Such
so
important work.
connected to everything that's going on around us. You know, like a lot of times I for a long time too, like I avoided like large groups of people. I avoid being on these calls if they're not this call, but these types of things. You know what I'm saying? If they're
Mhm.
large amounts of really abrasive people, or a lot of ego involved, because I get so overwhelmed.
Me too.
It affects me for a very long time. Like if I, you know what I mean? And so I have to honor my own space, and sit with that, to know, because I'm full of my own weird shit too. So it's like, well,
Yep.
what's mine and what's yours and what's this and blah blah blah. And by
And
allowing
Heather, the
that
alternative to
quiet.
that choice that you're making there is to become less sensitive. That's the alternative that we have. We can be more sensitive and protective of our sensitivity, or we can be less sensitive and more I don't know what you want to say, shielded.
I think
But
that
and so that's an interesting idea, that there's this, the sensitivity requires peace and meditation. I'm just sitting here reading 2 Corinthians 5:1. It says, "For we know that if our earthly house uh, of this tabernacle were dissolved," which is an interesting idea in and of itself, "we have the building of God, and house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens."
Mm.
So this is not the that's not the classic sort of in my father's house there are many mansions. If it were not so, I would not have told you so. I go to prepare a place for you. That's the sort of standard idea of what heaven. But there are a lot of other references, and 2 Corinthians 5:1 I think is has more information in it.
Ethereal. Yeah.
But then Hebrews 11, "For he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God." I mean, I don't believe in God, but I believe these are ancient truths that are passed down to us absolutely.
Right. And then you go to Revelation 22 towards the end, and behold, I looked, and there was no one sitting on the throne, because the Lamb and God are at the center of the throne, and they are the city. And inside the city, there are no wolves. The wolves are on the outside of the city and are not allowed in. And it's hard to get in. And it is a place. It's a place. It's a mindset and a heart set. And you have to be sympathetic. You have to be able to cry a lot to train your heart, to tune yourself, to know tears of joy, tears of thankfulness for what you do have, for the things that don't cost any money but are amazing, like your legs. Fuck. I mean, the best things in life are clearly not what we pay for. The best things in life are our senses, our heart, our ability to love, our ability to open our heart to the point where it can be unconditional. If we can get that sensitive and far enough away from other people that might harm us, but you can do it around your enemies that are feasting at the same table at the same time.
Right. Well, it's about
And that's
honoring
what people have a hard time doing.
because we want to shield it, right? We want to keep these negative feelings away. We want to guard our sensitivity. But I think that the opposite is what will make us stronger. And I think that is allowing ourselves to be that sensitive and honoring it and knowing that it's a strength. And then because going through that allows us the discernment, right? So that because our emotions are here for a reason. They're indicators that something is going wrong. Like maybe we feel that something isn't good for our system. True. That's why we're feeling that. And if we don't address those emotional things, they're going to turn into mental things, and those mental things are going to turn into physical things, and all of those things are going to be ailments that we now have. And
you never worry about it.
Exactly.
That's the key. You never worry about it, but you be so aware of yourself that if you can sense minute changes, because if you were worried about it, then it's like you become the mathematician and you get obsessed.
You create that, right?
Yeah. So you have to be able to flow with it,
Flow is the perfect word. Flow is the perfect word.
Sensitivities. To sense them.
I have a little philosophy that I go by, or a little rule that I go by, and specifically with respect to feelings and emotion, which the whole thing about crying I think is brilliant and it's crucial. Crying prevents angering. I mean, it's
all sorts of stuff. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it's just it's huge. I'm drawn to tears on a regular basis, and I let that happen. Here's the trick. It's like you let it flow through you freely. You don't shield, you don't push it away, and you don't hold on, you don't contain. You allow feelings, emotions, sensitivities, waves from the universe to flow through you because we're a conduit. The mental illness comes from pushing away that energy or holding on to that energy.
I can't feel this way. I need pills because I just broke up with my girlfriend, or right. Oh man, I can't feel this pain. Nobody's supposed to feel this bad. Yeah. No, dude, it's heartache, heartbreak. It's good for you.
That's not necessarily nice or right either, because I think that a lot of times when people are subjected to traumatic, negative, difficult situations, our brains are made to constantly reform themselves. So if you are put into a state of hyper vigilance, hyper awareness, hyper whatever for any length of time, just like any other part of your body or system, there's parts that are going to overcompensate and build stronger muscles in maybe in a negative way. So you're going to build a stronger brain system, and then you're kind of trapped in that, because now you have to metabolically reverse that before you can fully heal from the effects of it. And that's what I was talking about, the emotional, mental, physical, because when we talk about that, we're talking about the actual construction of our organ brain and what happens to it because of these types of scenarios and situations. And so we have to also allow that, because if you were like, this person's handicapped, they're missing their foot, or their hand wasn't fully developed in utero, like, you don't expect that person to be able to function as well as somebody who has been formed healthy. And we can't see what's inside someone else's brain, but if we see someone who has suffered such a handicap or such a malformation, and yet through that malformation they're able, through medical assistance or energetic assistance or whatever it is that they may need to be able to get to a healthy state, then they are working through their handicap, and they shouldn't be ostracized or looked down upon for that. They should be commended for the extra work that they had to do to get where you just naturally are. And I think that it's really unfair that we put people in these types of, we look at people in these ways when that's how their physiology has built them. And so if we want to address the system as a whole and take responsibility for ourselves and what's going on, we have to allow the compassion to say, this person is in this situation, and it might be their brain. It might be their neurological system that has been built to react to a situation they are no longer in, and yet that's still how they function. And loving that anyway, and saying, you know, it's okay to take the time that you need. It's okay to reach out for mental health resources if necessary to help you get where you can be, where like the healthiest form of you that you could be. And I feel like because we don't allow that of each other, and these primordial instincts to do things such as hunt, fight, build, struggle, we are no longer subjected to these types of things, but our physiology still demands them of us, so they manifest in very unhealthy and strange ways. And so we need to be able to look at that within ourselves before we're going to get anywhere.
Well, I can tell you one thing that doesn't help is the deep net, the deep web, all that crap. That's like an open hole, an open source. You can't shut down of just.
But that's part of our humanity too, right? Because whether we like it or not, we're connected to that. If we're all part of the same system and we're all one,
yeah, but if we have
yourself is part of our humanity too.
If consciousness is the state of a collective recursion on a sheet that, like we were talking about, the galactic plane in constant motion, and it remembers its past membranes, and it holds in that all that information. I don't know where I was taking that, but I'm looking at the trees outside my window, and I'm seeing the same exact structure of everything that we've talked about on the whole entire show, and the branching and the Lichtenberg figures, and my mind.
You're drowning in profundity.
I'm drowning in profundity, and we do have to close this. So, as a crazy closing remark, I think they say that we've been around, according to math, and what they did the math of the how many times we went around the galaxy, our solar system, how old it is. It's only went around 20 times around the galaxy, the solar system. So that means if you were to take this winding helix coid right here, like this would be 1 year, or this would be one time around, this would be one time around, because it spins and goes all the way around. You know what I mean? One revolution. So you have you have the entire solar cycle right here in 20 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. You know what I mean? So 13.
Where do you get the number 20 from, buddy?
Well, according to I did the math myself and I looked into it. How many times has the solar system? Sorry, I'm a slow typer. Orbited in the galaxy. 20 times. Right here. Hypertextbook.com. The sun has orbited the galaxy more than 20 times during its five. So around 20 times. 21 times. And that's what they, isn't that nuts? So 20 times around the helix of the chord of this can be 20 revolutions of the one time around. See what I'm saying?
Well, the implications are like it's an interesting number, as a sacred number, kind of.
So you have the beginning of the solar system right here, then, and here's where we're at right now, when we're coming around, or wherever, you know, you pick a point, and we're right there. We're moving around this filament, these snaky filaments. Anybody got any closing remarks, prayers, sage,
I
Anything?
do.
I'm just really happy
Hello.
to know all you guys. I've
Nice.
I've learned a lot just by hearing other people's feedback and ideas, and I don't think anybody's wrong with their belief systems, and I think we're all on the same path myself. So I appreciate you guys.
I really want to thank everybody for spending
Ditto.
the time here today. I really appreciate our friendships and being here, because that's why we're here, to lovingly spread the good news. And this is good news. There's plenty of good news. There's fresh releases every week, plenty of new content to delve into. Next week, I'd like to get into this more about the more of See the Patterns videos about the proof of the gas in a helical cloud. I think that's really important to the model of the Dougherty set and how it's predictive. If we can start to model 1 and 1, then we can start to see what possibly could happen next out here and what systems become next. And maybe the size of birds' beaks as well. Whoop, whoop. All right. Thanks for being here, guys. Another great Saturday spent with you.
Thanks for having us, buddy. It's been good
Thanks,
talking
buddy.
to you guys. Appreciate you guys.
You never
All right.
disappoint, buddy. It's awesome. Or maybe you do
Thanks.
sometimes, but not yet.
Hey,
And not
next
lately.
week, thanks. Next week, I'm not going to disappoint either. I mean, we're going to scale this in and we're going to go right into the current. And quite soon along here, soon enough, the book's going to be released, and there's plenty of numbers to start crunching once the book's released, because I've been typing away. So, all right. That's the geometric view, wrapping it up, and we'll see you back here next week. Have a good weekend, guys.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. You too.
All right. Bye. All right. Episode 6. Thank you for coming here and watching the video, appreciating it, liking it, sharing it, hitting that bell. If you're looking to support me, I support myself. I work my ass off all day long. So someday I might ask for help eventually. And that will be the chance. Because I'm Poe. The geometric view is love is watching product. Love is watching production. Thank you for doing that. Executive producers of the Geometric View are Buddy James and Brighton Cotter. Music is by the acronym Beauty, the acronym BUD, and Abyssal Dionysus is the geometer. That's me and Brighton. Thank you for being here. Catch you next Saturday. Special thanks to Jim Wenninger and Garreth from See the Pattern, as well as Neil Thompson and the whole Electric Universe community.